Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Your Excellency, United Nations Resident Coordinator, UNDP Resident Representative, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and representatives from embassies and international organizations present here and those following remotely, Executive Director of the Legal Aid Forum, members of the Rwanda Civil Society Coalition on UPR and other national civil society organizations, distinguished participants, all protocols observed, a very good morning to all of you. My name is Leonie Mutoni. I work with the Legal Aid Forum and I have the pleasure to MC today's workshop. I would like to start by thanking every one of you for accepting our invitation and making the time to be part of this important discussion. As you are aware, we have convened here today to reflect from a CSO perspective on human rights in Rwanda in light of Rwanda's third UPR review. The Universal Periodic Review is the most comprehensive mechanism that assesses state performance on human rights ranging from civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. Rwanda has been reviewed under this process 3 times. The first time was in 2011, second time in 2015, and most recently, January this year. Different recommendations were accepted by the government throughout these reviews, and a number of them have been implemented. In today's workshop, it's going to be a very interactive session. We're not merely going to go through the new recommendations, but rather, as you will see from your agenda, we're going to have different panels of discussion reflecting on the recommendations accepted by the government throughout the reviews, the opportunities and challenges in implementation and way forward. Without further ado, I invite the Executive Director of the Legal Aid Forum to give welcome remarks. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Leonie. The Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Rwanda, Your Excellency UN Resident Coordinator, UNDP Resident Representative and Co-Chair of the Justice Sector, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and representatives from embassies and international organizations here present, those in the room, and we have a couple of people online who are also following this event today, and we want to thank them for hanging on for a while. Representatives of the Rwanda Civil Society Coalition on UPR and other national civil society organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is an honor for me, on behalf of the Rwanda Civil Society Coalition, to welcome you to this meeting. We are particularly delighted to have in our midst the Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, who has graciously accepted to come and share with the coalition members and its stakeholders his perspectives on the needed cooperation between the states and civil society in the implementation of the next set of recommendations accepted by Rwanda this year. We salute the government of Rwanda for participating in the just concluded review of the UPR and accepting the biggest number of recommendations ever since the beginning of this important human rights mechanism. I would also like to thank Nyakubaha UN Resident Coordinator on behalf of all UN agencies involved in supporting the work of strengthening the promotion and protection of human rights in Rwanda. A big thank you to all development partners who are also supporting not only our coalition on UPR, but also other civil society working on human rights. I already mentioned some of them, but we can particularly mention UNDP, UNDP has been supporting this process since 2013. Swiss Cooperation, Belgian Embassy, the Netherlands, USAID, UK, the EU, and many more development partners who are present in Rwanda, who are also supporting a lot of initiatives that are aimed at promoting human rights. Thank you all to, I thank also the coalition for being present and contributing to the UPR process since 2011, when the first review for Rwanda took place. The work of the coalition involves monitoring, assessing, and reporting on how the recommendations are being implemented. And we are glad that some of the recommendations from our reports are taken into account by different government departments. And we can only hope that this is going to be the case for the next set of recommendations that we are given to Rwanda, 160 of them. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, UPR is the most comprehensive mechanism that assesses the state's performance on human rights, ranging from different types of rights as we know them. It's an important mechanism to promote the universality, interdependence, and indivisibility of human rights. It fully involves the country under review, Rwanda in our case. It ensures that participation of all relevant stakeholders, civil society included, that participate and give their own reports, which are also assessed by the Human Rights Council. And as you know, these are included in the compilation that they make. And I'm happy to report that our reports this for 2020, the review that was done this year was also considered, and some of the recommendations were taken into account. As the MC said, Rwanda was reviewed for the third time in January, and a set of recommendations were given. And we are hoping that during this interactive session that we're going to have, we can together think about how we can now start working on those recommendations together. We pledge to continue working with the government, Honorable Minister, on the implementation of the accepted recommendations and evaluating the developments of human rights situation in Rwanda. We will also provide comments on the implementation roadmap. Actually, this has started, and the action plan that the ministry is heading. And we are happy to report that the Legal Aid Forum representing the coalition was part of the meeting that took place in Musanze a few weeks ago. We will continue to produce fact-based information and analysis and evaluate and monitor the implementation of the recommendations to ensure results with the support of all the partners here present. Today's session will be an interactive one, as I said, where our expert will be reflecting on the impact of the UPR recommendation received by Rwanda in the previous reviews, looking critically at what the lessons have been, and then we can draw from those lessons to be able to implement the next set of recommendations. The session will be an opportunity for us as civil society to elicit ideas on the best ways and strategies to monitor the implementation, as the MC said. So I don't want to take much of the time because I'll be speaking again, but Honorable Minister, dear Resident Coordinator, dear participants, we are very humbled as the coalition to have you here and responding to our invitation. And those excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen who are following us online, it's a pleasure for the Legal Aid Forum and the coalition to host you. Now, as I conclude, I know UPR is very interesting, and I know for the last 3 reviews, we've learned a lot of lessons, and today we'll be reflecting on those. But I also take this opportunity to particularly thank the minister for, I find we've had ministers of justice before, very good ones, but as civil society, especially as the coalition, we find it very interesting and very engaging the way how the ministry, at least, is cooperating with the coalition, which is really something very, very important, and that we applaud as a coalition, as civil society. We can only hope that this can continue. Sometimes we have divergences of views, and that is what is required in a democratic state like ours. But that does not mean that we don't see positive things that are taking place, for sure, you know, Honorable Minister. But as civil society, our mandate is also grounded on the fact that we want to also leave no stone unturned on the issues that sometimes can escape or can, I don't know the best word to use, but that is what we are known for. If we sit and see things that are not going right and we don't talk to them or we don't report to them, I think that would be cheating ourselves as a nation. So, but we want to thank you for being cooperative, the department that Providence heads. They've been cooperating, they have been involving us in the discussions, and we can only hope that since for the first time you accepted 160, which is also something very important. So in the previous review, review we had 50, 2011, I think there were 60, 70 thereabout. But this time, the fact that the government accepted more, it's a testament that the government wants things to improve, especially in terms of human rights and the rule of law. So I will end my speech from here. Again, I want to thank all of you for coming and the support and the work that we will continue doing together, and kindly stay for all the discussions. I know we have great panelists who will be discussing not only what has been given, as Leon said, we want to look at what does it mean to receive all these recommendations, because some of these recommendations have been coming for the last almost 10 years now. What does it mean to receive a recommendation on access to one single recommendation every time we are reviewed in Geneva? Does it mean that we are improving? Does it mean or we are not improving? These are some of the discussions that we want to, it's not just about recommendations, but it's also about how do we improve and how do we make sure that the recommendations are implemented properly, so that of course we will keep receiving. Each time we are going through UPR, I know we're always going to receive recommendations on access to justice. But why should we be receiving recommendations on, for instance, improving conditions in prison all the time? Does it mean anything? So that is some of the things that the great panelists will be discussing, and not only on the recommendations that are given recently, but also trying to see, so how do we make sure that in the next report, in the next review, some of these recommendations, we would love to see different recommendations on access to just socioeconomic rights, but not maybe the same recommendations keep coming, because UPR is a very dynamic process. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and all invited guests, and welcome again.
Thank you very much, Executive Director, for the wonderful opening remarks. It is my pleasure to welcome the UN Resident Coordinator to give us opening remarks as well. Thank you.
Nyakubava, Minister of Justice and Attorney General, my brother Johnston Dusingi, Nyakubava, Executive Director, Legal Aid, my brother Edwards, and Nyakubava, UNDP Resident Representative, my brother Maxwell Gomera, distinguished members of Diplomatic Corps, international organizations, representative of NGOs, civil societies, private sector, the media, colleagues from the One UN Rwanda. It is always with great pleasure for me to participate in events led by civil society, in particular this one, which aim at reflecting on civil society organization, partnership and engagement with the government in the implementation of the recommendation formulated by the Human Rights Council Working Group on UPR in the framework of the third cycle of UPR review. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the Legal Aid Forum for inviting us on this important exercise. I would like also to thank UNDP and the Swiss Corporation for their support to this event. But I really want to say thank you to the Minister, Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, because in many countries, this kind of events should not happen. You have battle between the civil societies, organization, and the government, because UPR is a state-led process. But here, I have seen, following from all the cycles, how the partnership between the civil society organization and the government is increasing and is strengthened in order to reflect overall on the UPR, design a concerted roadmap, and implement it together. I do believe that this is the most effective way, because UPR, human rights, are above all about the people, the citizen. It should be purpose-driven on how you build a stable, cohesive, and peaceful society, as it has been already firmed up in the SDG 16. And SDG 16, I must say that Rwanda was among the 4 countries globally and the 2 in Africa, which pioneered the SDG 16, showing really this coalition on both sides. Honorable Minister Nyakubava, thank you so much for this approach that you are taking. As you know, human rights is, for the UN, the foundation of our charter, and also the basis of the SDGs. All the SDGs are about human rights, the socioeconomic rights, the right to freedom, the democracy, the participation of citizens, and so on and so forth. So for us, it is highly important on our agenda, because it's about the people, and the SDGs is about the people, the planet, partnership, prosperity, and that's important for us. As you know, the preparation, submission, and the examination of states report during the UPR process constitute the great moments when the stakeholders, including the national human rights institutions, civil societies, play an important and invaluable role. Indeed, even in the resolution setting the UPR, it was equally mentioned that the civil societies or civil society organization has a critical role in this process. And as I recalled, the minister always said that they value the inclusive and participatory UPR process, as well as the mobilization of civil society actors. Indeed, even the civil society did submit the report and contribution to the Human Rights Council Working Group, and this contribution were included in the summary of the stakeholders' submission on Rwanda on 16 November 2020. Nyakubava Minister, Executive Director, as it was reminded to us by the Legal Aid Executive Director, the 160 recommendation accepted out of this 284 formulated are really a way forward in designing the roadmap as it was done in Musanze. Of course, it is obvious that as Legal Aid Executive Director was saying, some are coming, but it's a nature of life, because life is a continuous progress. You cannot, if we stop one day saying we have achieved 100% of what we should achieve, I mean, we no longer have incentive to push forward. You always need to push the boundaries. Don't want to take too much of the time, but I just I wanted even to start by that. Max shared with me a nice video, and one of them is really saying, I hope that you have left your cell phone at home. Because with this time of cell phone, we are no longer building social relation. We forget about the purpose. We are talking about organization, texting things. Even when we are here, people might, oh, this is the test message. Whereas I need to talk to each other. And this is how we build society. And I'm glad that this is the approach of the minister. So during this interactive dialogue with the Human Rights Council, what was agreed upon? Among them, I think we need to recall some, and I did it in my speech on this national stakeholder dialogue on the UPR, the right to freedom of opinion, freedom of expression of the press, association, peaceful assembly, strengthening the media, pluralism, safety of journalists and human rights defenders, strengthening the role of civil society, review the registration requirement for local and international NGOs, the rights of children, women, people living with disabilities, refugees, strengthening the justice sector and the rule of law, ratification of some human rights convention. In all this, I can testify that Rwanda is moving forward. And I think that together we can do more and better for our country. So the implementation is not just the responsibility, as it is mentioned here, of the government. It is a whole of society and a whole of government approach. And civil society has an important role to play. The development partners, the UN and other citizens to play. So let me conclude by saying that in embarking in the elaboration of the roadmap for the implementation of the accepted UPR recommendation, I have no doubt whatsoever that this meeting aims to suggest to the government the action you intend to carry out as civil society organization. And I'm confident that your reflection will take into account the lessons learned of the third UPR cycle roadmap and the current challenges of COVID-19. And I'm glad that we managed whatsoever to have this face-to-face partly meeting. As I outlined it during the stakeholder dialogue on the fourth UPR cycle of 20th April 2021, the One UN Rwanda will, as much as possible, accompany the government, civil societies, and national human rights institutions during this phase of identifying strategies of implementation of UPR recommendation. It is in line with this objective of a coherent and concerted support of the UN Rwanda that I have tasked my colleagues to establish an interagency human rights force, which will be your privileged partner. The One UN Rwanda looks forward to the results of your fruitful and productive deliberation, because we do believe on the importance of the civil society organization in moving forward this country. I thank you for your kind attention and wish you success to your workshop. Minister again, Murakoze Chane, Turikumwe, Abishize Hamwe, Nakibananira. Thank you for your kind attention. Murakoze Chane.
We can give him another. Thank you very much, RC, for the always insightful remarks on advice on how we can work together, especially on human rights, but also on other development issues. So, Honorable Minister, we are 20 in the room, but as you can see, we also have 58. It was about 60 a few minutes ago. I think some people keep coming and going. So we can say that you're going to address about 80 people, 20 here and the rest in their own offices. So without further ado, I want to welcome you to give us the remarks you have.
Thank you very much, Executive Director, Legal Aid Forum, and my good friend, Andrews. Excellencies, Resident Coordinator, distinguished representatives of United Nations agencies here or online, Executive Director, members of Civil Society Coalition and UPR and other civil society organizations, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all wish you a very good morning and apologize that I delayed you. I should have been on time. Something intervened. Resident Coordinator told me when I found him there that ministers are never late. There is always something that comes up. But I always want to be on the time that we promised to meet, but something came up. So those with whom we are in the room and the colleagues who are out there with the help of technology, I hope you have all forgiven me. I also extend sincere thanks to the members of the Civil Society Coalition and UPR for the interest you have demonstrated in the process and your contribution since Rwanda signed up. I think when we signed up, the coalition didn't exist the same way it exists now. But I think there was some kind of coalition. It was probably not registered anywhere. It was probably not called that name. But I think there was some kind of coalition. And we have all grown together since Rwanda signed up. Today we are a different state from what we were in 2007, 2008, 2009. But I want to believe that the interest and contribution since Rwanda signed up has always pointed up, it has not gone down. It hasn't always been smooth, but it has been moving. I also thank the Legal Aid Forum for its role as convener of this forum to reflect on human rights in the context of the UPR. Let me also thank you, Mr. RC, for your kind remarks that you just made, but also for your constant, consistent support and interest, and through you to the One UN family, because you've been providing lots of boosts in many ways. Our advancement in the area of human rights and in the UPR in particular owes a lot to your push, your interest, your contribution, your many kinds of support. So I really thank you, and not just me, the government of Rwanda. We thank you very much. Unlike other occasions of this nature, of UPR nature we have had before, today I was asked to speak to a specific topic. Normally they tell me I am a guest of honor and I should come and give a speech. So I sit in my office and figure out who is going to be there. Then what should we say? Then what are the issues out there? And then we come up with a speech. This time I was put in you know, when you're spraying cows, you put them in a space called a crush. So I was put in that crush and I'm supposed to be sprayed, I think. So I can't run around with my own ideas and Providence's ideas. I can only speak to the needed cooperation between state and CSOs in the implementation of the 2021 recommendations of the UPR. But I'm also very happy about this because maybe it's another level of implementation of the UPR. Maybe this speaks to that. But I beg to break out a little and link this to the opportunities that now exist and some other things that I think are good to share. Before I go far, let me join colleagues who are online and right here in the room, who have done lots of things around the UPR until the time we were reviewed. In my view, it wasn't our work. It was just state-led, but it was your work. Those of you in the room and those of you out there, it was work done by all of us. So I want to thank you so much for it. The objective of the UPR, as has just been said, is to review the fulfillment of the human rights commitments and obligations of all 193 member states and provide an opportunity for all states to declare what actions have to be taken to improve the human rights situations in their countries and to overcome challenges to the enjoyment of those rights. The ultimate goal is to improve human rights situations in every country with significant benefits for people around the world. It is designed to prompt, to support, and to expand the promotion and protection of human rights on the ground. As you know, as Andrew just mentioned, Rwanda has gone through 3 reviews, 2011, 2015, and the third and most recent, 25th January 2021. Regarding the outcome of the review, you are obviously aware that we received a total of 284 recommendations from 99 delegations. Among these recommendations, we accepted 160, we noted 75, we did not support 49. Now, I've been recently having some bit of debate with Geneva about when we say we don't support, Geneva writes back to us and says, no, you don't have a right not to support. You have to call it another name. So we've been busy with Providence trying to call it another name. I like it. I like the back and forth because I say, well, I don't want to report on this in these 5 years. Then they say, okay, even if you don't want to report on it, still, you cannot say you don't support it. Our rules, our procedures, and so on, don't accept it. So in the end, we call it what? Noted? Yes, it is called noted. And when it is called noted, the idea is that in the end, it is not rejected. It is not unsupported. So it is hanging somewhere there between accepted and not accepted. So it is somewhere there. So I think the human rights groups in Geneva, we need to continue sending them appreciation notes for being very creative in the wording of these things. So they just tell you, rejection, don't use that word, but find some other words that will make everybody comfortable. So we try to do that and we learn. We continue learning. When I resist for 2 days, Providence comes back and says, well, how can you be resisting for more than 2 days? We have a deadline. Then the ambassador calls. Then there is all this back and forth. And in the end, we find something and it is registered. And having reminded ourselves of the process, before I go there, Andrew said for the first time we accepted a big number of recommendations. Yes, we did. And I also think if you look at 2011, you look at 2015, you look at now, there is more dynamism in our society. There is more expansion in our population. There is more internationalization in this country. There are many individuals, private business investors, private citizens who simply come to Rwanda, many other people who just come to Rwanda. So we also know that our country, like many other countries in the globe, is becoming more and more internationalized even in its own nature of the population, of the activities that happen in the country. And therefore, that travels with all these ranges of rights. Because when people come to Rwanda and they offer to work in Rwanda or stay in Rwanda for 2 years or 10 years or for the remaining part of their lives, the people travel with their rights. They don't leave them where they were, unless where they left, there were no rights. Then that's a different story. But when they travel here, they travel with their rights. So in my view, that's an addition. So 160 could be explained in many ways, including that every 5 years, there is expansion, there is dynamism, there's creativity, there is more collaboration, there's more cooperation. And, you know, the space keeps on expanding, getting clearer, and on both sides, because there are those who demand for rights, there are those who in theory give the rights. I think between those two, there is always a space for understanding, for collaboration and cooperation, and then for more and more enjoyment of rights. Having reminded ourselves of that, let me say that the first, and in my view, best opportunity that I know and enjoy is the cooperation between the state and civil society organizations in implementing the UPR recommendations. Looking at cooperation from our end as government, we see it as the only option we have. It is not one option among other options. If there are other options, cooperation is number one, the other options can be number two, going on. And by cooperation, I mean full and meaningful cooperation. Working towards achievement of human rights ideals anywhere in the world has never been an individual or unilateral effort. I don't know anywhere where it has been individual, unilateral, dictated by civil society, or dictated by governments, or dictated by environment. It has always been a cooperative effort by actors that are relevant in the field, and also by actors who, by design or by default, are beneficiaries from the process. So the collaboration we have built over the years, I believe, is a great opportunity that we should be building on going forward. In the context of the UPR process in Rwanda, I think you will all agree with me that the gains we have achieved so far are owed to the existing cooperation among key stakeholders, including civil society. As I reflect on this, I want to believe that those of you who have been involved in the process for all these years are witnesses of the positive trends since the first review. I believe that the curve points upwards. I might be wrong, I might be blowing my own trumpet, so I will want the meeting, I will want the participants, I will want much later to learn what do others think. If you think I am blowing the trumpet, let me know so that I stop doing so. As I have always noted, the second cycle approach reversed the 2011 experience of the first, where most of the stakeholders used to adopt an individualistic and confrontational approach. I don't know those who are in the process in 2011, going to 2015, I don't know how many we have in the room. I guess there might be a few. Andrews is probably one of them. There is a second one? Yeah. The process those days was confrontation. I don't know who had given these people a phone call from Geneva and told them, you know, you guys, now this is your process to fight that government. So you would wake up in the morning and everybody was fighting. Then you go out looking for the fighters, they are all underground. You are not seeing them, but you would be seeing, you know, snippets out there in the media somewhere on, you know, Twitter wasn't so much here, but you would be seeing, you know, there is a fight. Someone is fighting you for doing that. Another one is fighting you for doing that. So we were really in a situation that wasn't going to be collaborative, cooperative. And in the end, I thought it was going to make us lose sight of the intent of the process. So most CSOs worked from underground and they kept government in the dark about what they were doing. Their aim was always Geneva. So they kept underground, but when we took a flight to going to Geneva, we would meet many people, like 10, 15, 20 from Rwanda. Then I would be, you know, whispering with my friends, who are these people? Where are they coming from? And someone would be telling me, you know, these are civil society groups from Rwanda. Are you sure? Yeah. Then they get the names, then, you know, and at one point, I don't know whether we're with Andrews in Geneva, one time I just said, you guys, all of you come down for dinner. I want to know you. I don't know how I don't know you in Rwanda, but somehow we know each other when we are here and we are fighting in the corridors of Geneva. So we thought that this was contrary to the intent of the UPR, and we sought to redirect it. For the last 5 years or so, I think we have witnessed a trend, a different trend, more cooperation, less individualistic, less confrontational tendencies among the actors, inclusivity, complementarity, and the focus on Rwandans' lives, I think are the other opportunities that we need to be building on. I believe that in suggesting this topic for me to reflect on that today, the conveners intended, or for all of us, sorry, the conveners intended that we evaluate the existing cooperation. And I think the question today is not whether we should have cooperation or not. I think it should be how far should we take our cooperation? To which next level should we be taking it? So as we gather here, let us reflect back together, make a thorough evaluation of the journey we have walked together in this process for the years, reflect on the challenges we met, and commit to a joint and appropriate way forward as we embark on yet another cycle. Engagements on all issues, frankly, having no issues too sacred to interrogate, taking a stand, agreeing to disagree sometimes, are all good indicators of a healthy dialogue and also are great opportunities. As you probably have noted, the 160 recommendations that we undertook to implement for the current cycle, they cover the whole range: civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights, rights of specific groups, including children, women, persons with disabilities, refugees, and asylum seekers, and so on. Some recommendations focus on specific areas such as climate change and environment. I noted that specific slots have been provided for different panels to reflect on these rights at some point during this reflection. It will be important to hear and to engage on your perspectives on the same. And whether today or later, please feel free, feel completely free to engage with us, seek our responses, push the boundaries together, as the RC just said, so that in the end, whatever we achieve, we are proud we achieved it together. It doesn't matter who pushed more than the other. If we achieve what we wanted, we should forget about who was doing the pushing and who was doing the resisting. And Andrews raised a few points about certain things which keep coming back. RC kindly responded, and I want to support him and say, if we stopped at some point and said, we have now had 100% access to justice, then what would we be doing tomorrow? If we said prison conditions, perfect, 100%, then what would you say tomorrow? Civil society. Those of you who are in the area of prison conditions, would you pack your bags and now go to agriculture and see whether maize is doing well? What would you be doing? If we do legal aid and we are 100%, we have the policy, we have reviewed it, we have the law, we have everything, Andrews is clean, what will he do? Whom will he push and for what? So in my view, all these areas, human rights defenders, the right of dissenters, indigenous communities, media freedom, all these are areas that if you sit here in a room, and I come from where I come, from my background, from government, I'll give you a report for which you can give me a lot of marks. But also, if you also come from your civil society perspective and you are doing the critique, you can also do a critique for which you'll get a lot of marks. So if I get 70 and you get 70, both of us have A, isn't it? Yes, but I have A in defending my record. Since 1994 to 2021, the media was narrow, was stifled, was not moving. Today, it's this in terms of numbers, in terms of involvement, in terms of diversity. Then you will say, okay, now that you have that kind of media, now we should be going to the next thing. What is it? What is the content? What is the ethics? What are the responsibilities of media people? What are the borderlines between media freedom and the penal code, for example? So what civil society should be doing with us is going to these next levels. Check out, what does this Rwanda Investigation Bureau, how does it pick up a media person? Why? Then civil society should be going into this thing. And if you find there is reason, then we should be bringing media in the room and saying, look here, this penal code has always been here. It contains 400 offenses. So you being from the media, if you commit one of the things in this penal code, your being in the media is not going to protect you from an official from RIB carrying you to RIB. So the media is not going to be an umbrella for you to commit an offense. If you're a dissenter, you dissent. It's okay, but don't do what RIB calls genocide denial. Don't do it. And civil society can come in now to draft, to try and find out what is the borderline between genocide denial and this dissent that has happened. So someone doesn't say, I'm dissenting, and then we say, okay, since you are dissenting, the penal code is closed. Or Rwandans are just happy because that is it. No. If they are dissenting and they do something that is offensive, then I believe that what we mean by collaboration, by cooperation with civil society, I want to believe that it also includes going to the next level, interrogating those questions. Because an investigation bureau cannot be made of very bad guys who are simply sitting there waiting to go and arrest someone. No. In fact, any extra arrest is a burden to them. Anybody they arrest is a burden to them. But then what do you do when someone has committed an offense? So if you are on VOA and on BBC and everywhere, and you say, yes, we did attack this country from southwestern Rwanda, and we are in that forest called Nyungwe, and we will move all the way to Kigali and remove the government, right? Then you attack and people die and property is destroyed. Then we say, okay, people who violate the law, commit offenses, we have a duty to bring them to account. We have a duty to bring them to justice. It is our duty to Rwandans as government. Then when one day we bring you, then you say dissent. I am a dissenter. Fine. But there can be two things. You first deal with the RIB issue. After dealing with it, then you go and dissent. I don't want one to crowd out the other. So the way we have, I think, to go to the next level, to apply pressure, to engage with government, to engage with each other, is also to interrogate our own selves. What are we doing at our level in the GBV area, in the rights of women, in the rights of children, in dissent, in human rights defenders, in all these areas? What are we doing in this area? What next level can we go to? So that all of us keep going to the next level. So if we think we have done access to justice 100%, then you should come up and say, look here, Minister, it's not 100%. There are 4 areas that haven't been addressed, or there are consequent areas that have grown, that have cropped up out of what you have done. You have provided full access, but there are new things that have come up, which you need to address. So I think that is the only way we will keep on this cycle forever. I don't think Geneva started, the UN started it so that countries reach perfection and stop there. I think this is a process that will go on forever because people's minds, people's brains, people's expectations, people's aspirations never stop. And because they never stop, rights keep growing up. Some rights which were not rights when I was a young man or before I was born, today are fundamental. When my father was born, there are some rights which were not even known across the globe. Right now, they are known. So I believe that in the next 10 years, 40 years, 50 years, there will be things today we cherish a lot, which will be obsolete, and there will be brand new things happening at the time. Maybe there will be life on Mars, and people who are on Mars will be using not traffic police, but some other kind of, travel regulation. So what we know here as traffic police may not be relevant on Mars when there is life out there. So there should be a dynamism in the world that allows all of us to keep growing in our different roles. So the role of civil society, therefore, in every country's life is key. This is true in the human rights field as it is in all other aspects of life. We are aware that you have the material and human expertise for your areas of intervention, but above all, you have the commitment to serve the Rwandan people. Government is fully aligned on this. We will continue to play the necessary lead roles to ensure that all government departments, all institutions are on board and are active. My take is that CSO's involvement and cooperation in the UPR process is vital at all stages, from the review, dissemination of the recommendations, implementation, monitoring, evaluating, and reporting. As I alluded to this earlier, this cooperation should be full, meaningful, and genuine. Over the years, we have worked on a number of challenges together to make the reviews smooth. But again, naturally, we expect challenges from the range of implementation stages because it is broad. And it is through handling of these challenges that we grow together. Before I conclude, let me state that while we are happy with the fair achievements we registered during the last cycle, we believe that together, again, we will achieve more. We accepted 160 recommendations. The number, as Andrew said, the number speaks to a broader range of areas to cover and probably a broader grouping of participants, of actors who want to group around specific recommendations. particularly the role of the CSOs in the UPR. Regarding the role of the CSOs in the UPR, I want to reiterate that the Ministry of Justice is committed to ensure that the role of CSOs in the UPR is more coordinated and has direct and positive impact on the lives of Rwandans. I think that is what Andrew was speaking to. We wish to ensure that what is done in each area is well documented, is evidence-based, and that at the end of the implementation period, the contributions, whether of CSOs, whether of government, are clearly reflected in the national report. This will be achieved through frank and smart collaboration. And as you said, Andrews, I think going forward, one of the things that we might carry through this process is the quality of implementation. Not simply we have a recommendation and we reported on it. Let's now go beyond the rhetoric, the talking about it, or a general quantification of what we did. Let's go forward and say, yes, if it was done, then how does it reflect in the lives of ordinary Rwandans? Let's go out there and find our parents who are out there and ask them, speak to them, reach out to them, and be sure that if there is access to justice, then they can speak to something about it. They know something about it and they can relate to it. At the ministry, we are finalizing a plan on how we should further engage with civil society on the matters of human rights in general and UPR in particular. Very soon, we will be seeking to engage with all groups, organizations, to probably, and we will meet probably from where you work or any other convenient place that we agree, so that we have conversations on how we want to go forward, but specific groups, we want to address them specifically. If there is if we have recommendations regarding media, we want to convene a media forum. We have recommendations regarding GBV, women's rights, children's rights. We want to convene women's rights groups, women's rights organizations, and speak to them. How do we implement these recommendations that we adopted? If there are groups in access to justice, we want to have a specific meeting on specific recommendations regarding access to justice, so that at the outset, as we begin implementation, all actors have been specifically reached out to, and we have had a specific conversation on that group of recommendations, and we have agreed these are the best ways. This is where we start. We agree on the baselines. We agree on how we can implement faster, cheaper, and in a more cooperative and collaborative fashion. We want these conversations to be focused, to be contextual, and to have tangible results that are clear for actors who are in this. The reason we are trying to do this is that in the previous cycle, we were not so sure. We were sure a little bit, but not absolutely sure that all groups who relate to specific recommendations were reached out to, and we had conversations with them. They owned this process. They made their own recommendations regarding their specific area of interest. And then as a group, as a coalition, we took them on, but having reached out to the smaller groups in the areas that you usually intervene. The distinguished participants online and here, colleagues, friends, in conclusion, allow me to note that cooperation is by nature never imposed, nor is it ever a one-way relationship. We are very much aware of that. It calls for a common and free will of all of us, both sides. It is reciprocal and it thrives only when all of us act genuinely and act in good faith. For us, we promise that we will be not found wanting. Once again, I thank you all and I wish you fruitful reflections. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for the astute remarks. Thank you especially for the collaboration with the Ministry of Justice as the custodian of the implementation of the UPR recommendations, as well as the partnership in all things access to justice in Rwanda. Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, we are going to have our first panel. They're going to reflect on civil and political rights in light of the 2021 UPR recommendation. For each panel, there will be a Q&A session in which you'll be allowed to ask your questions. Feel free to note them down while the panel is going on. And for our participants online, please feel free to use the features available to you on the platform. You can send in your questions via chat, or you can raise your hand and we will unmute your microphone so that you can ask the questions. Without further delay, I would like to invite Maître Christian Karuka to welcome the panelists.
Thank you. No, just a little bit. Thank you, Leonia. I want us to change the. I know the RC has another meeting. Okay, so you will allow me to reverse a bit the program. We are glad the minister is here. He has spent some time to be with us, and he has given a very good presentation, for which I think we can also reflect on what the minister said. So you will allow me to change, to interrupt with the program a little bit. So we are now instead going to open up to have a few minutes to discuss on the topic of cooperation, because as you may have seen in the program, so it's really something different, of course, related to what we are saying, but we don't want to miss the opportunity of interacting with the minister, especially on the very important issues, very important suggestions he has made on how we can work together. So as we open up, the minister is ready to, DRC and all of us in the room are ready to, raise questions, suggestions, and see how. Max, thank you for being with us. And yeah, all right, no problem. So if you have anyone with a question in the room, definitely I hope we have. And then you can open up the chat so that people can start asking questions. Honorable Minister, as people prepare for their questions, can I see the hands? Do we have people in the room who would want to? Joseph, one. Any other hands? Okay, we have Joseph, but I hope we can also open the chat. Do you have questions in the chat? Please keep them coming. In the meantime, you alluded to the UPR process, how we started in 2011. Obviously, I was here. By then, I think I was also a young man. But there was also, as you rightly described, this misunderstanding of how civil society, and I believe it was not only the civil society who misunderstood how they should cooperate, because the mechanism was new then. Everything was, it wasn't the first time the government was reporting on human rights. You all know that we have different mechanisms of reporting, the treaty body report, but the government has been trying to clear the backlog. And by the way, they have done a lot. But UPR, as UPR then was something like we all didn't know how it should go. So we may have not understood exactly what to do. It's true that most of the civil society thought maybe engagement was not even useful, but we've learned lessons along the way. And I personally remember some of those colleagues of mine. I was new to the process too. I remember some people coming to my office, and then the next day I hear some of them have gone somewhere, have gone to Europe, and I wasn't sure why. But I think looking at exactly what those reports were at that time, I don't think they're even terrible reports, because if you look at the content of the report civil society produced in 2011, they were more or less like what the government was talking about. But I think the process was new then. We are not used to it. And we didn't know that we should cooperate as we know now, 2015 and now. So I think that is true. So we're also thinking that government has also, as you said, has been growing in terms of understanding how to engage civil society. So we're very happy about that. So without further, I think Joseph, you can go on with your question or suggestion. And guys on the technology, you can also let us know if you have any question or something on the chat. Joseph, mic is yours.
Thank you, Andrews. Honorable Minister and the resident coordinator. Well, thanks a lot for being with us today. So as the minister said, cooperation is never imposed, and it has to be reciprocal. But one thing I've noticed in my work being in civil society, but also as the chairperson of the civil society platform, is that you can't shy away working with civil society when you talk about governance or justice. So civil society is a key partner. But of course, how do people cooperate? I want to appreciate the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Justice, because they've been instrumental in bringing civil society together, and also they do have a civil society coordinator to the Minister of Justice. And I think the minister can help us to advocate for the civil society, because to me, I see you as a friend to civil society. When it comes to cooperation and collaboration, it's different with other government institutions. There is always this fear within some few heads of institutions, thinking that civil society is there to expose or maybe criticize what's not going. And of course, the government has done a lot, as you said, from 1994 until now. So people think that civil society doesn't recognize what the government has done. And always that's where the challenges come, because some officials enjoy to see nice things, to see achievements, to see, like they wouldn't enjoy seeing the few gaps. So I think to have proper partnership, there is need for that trust. And of course, as the minister said, that you would meet people in Geneva, which people you wouldn't see around when you're back home. Of course, that's also a challenge we have within the civil society. Why am I saying this? I think this message goes to my peers. During the review, the 2021 review, the UPR process, I'm also part of other regional networks. So there are other reports that were being shared by my peers from Rwanda with other regional human rights organizations. So when I would engage them, those are the regional bodies, they will say, but Joseph, you guys, you can't say this back home, you can't. So, and those regional institutions would send those reports to Geneva. And to me, I would see that as lack of collaboration between our civil society and government institutions. Because we need, as civil society, to have facts and engage the relevant government institutions with the facts, so that those issues can be addressed, than sending those other so-called sensitive issues to other regional bodies, so that they can send them to Geneva. So, Honorable Minister,
why don't you report them here instead of sending them to regional bodies?
Not me.
Why are they not reported by us who are doing our own reports?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So why is it that our peers, or maybe some members of your coalition, so I won't mention names, but I know, send them to defend the defenders in Kampala, Hassan, and Hassan sends them to Geneva. So why is it that we can't sit with other government officials and discuss these issues here? So that's why I would say that Minister Hussein is very engaging, and he's a friend to civil society. Maybe he can help us do some advocacy. But then we, the civil society, also, we need to either check ourselves. Why do we decide to use those other channels? Because at the end of the day, the human rights is about people, and people, it's about life. And to have a peaceful society, we need justice. And justice is about life, dignity, safety, non-aggression, non-violence, courtesy, fairness, and truthfulness. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that Joseph was asking a question. I think he was making important comments. But there are things that we can pick up from there. But first of all, let me say that I am not here as Hussein, as a person, as doing anything personal. I am here in my capacity as the Minister for Justice, and I represent government. So if you think this man here is a friend of civil society, that means all of us. That means all of us are friends of civil society. If you think we engage, that means we all engage. So the advocacy you are asking for, you count it as done. We will do it in the context of what we do. We lead in this process. We have a department, and our department has focal points in nearly every government department. I think even in the private sector. So the advocacy you are asking for, count it done. And what I know is that throughout the previous review, I don't think we ever got a report of a particular government department which is challenging to approach, which is challenging to deal with, to the extent we should do some advocacy. But if we get any request or engagement like that, it should be our duty, it should be our mission to approach any government department in light of what has been raised with us. So if, first of all, I want to say we are already there. It's it's a duty and a mission, but in case there is one or two things here that need to be ironed out, let us always know. The department is established specifically to carry out that, plus all of us at the ministry. The other thing you mentioned that probably still creeps on, I don't know why it would, is people deciding that, this issue is a very sensitive one. I better send it to a friend in another country so that nobody ever knows it came from me. Well, go back to 2011, come back, fast forward to today. I think those kinds of issues, either people generate them in order to keep them alive, or they have fundamentally changed. What I know that people thought was sensitive in 2011, 2010, and so on, is now we talk about it all the time. So what I would want to encourage everybody is, and I think it's happening, because when I wake up and I read what's going on social media, I find every kind of issue that I don't know those who define an issue as sensitive. I don't know which sensitive word which dictionary they are getting the word from. But I know that when I read what is going on social media, even people, without people saying I am called so and so, but they write content, they write what they want to write. Even those who say I am so and so, but I'm saying that this particular official or this particular activity violates this kind of right. I have seen all this happening. So I want to support Joseph that people should now should take it for granted that they can raise any issue they want. And there are so many other ways of raising those issues, whether by directly quoting who they are and raising the issues in their forums, in the different organizations, or even going on social media and sending to the minister and saying, Minister, this is not happening very well in agriculture, in internal affairs, in justice, whatever it is. Just raise these issues. So it might probably be a hangover from yesteryears. People still have this little, drama. The drama of confrontation is always dramatic indeed. So maybe people still have this hangover from the drama of confrontation. But if you intend to collaborate and cooperate and send a matter through any organization you want, that matter will be addressed, will be discussed. What I think that we all need to do is to understand that because you raise the matter, you are not infallible, you are not absolutely right, you are also ready to accept an answer. You are ready to accept a conversation. You are ready to accept a response. And if my response doesn't agree with what you think, that's not a big offense. It's not something to cause a problem between the two of us. But you have raised the matter, I have answered to the matter, and perhaps I have taken one or two lessons, which I will continue working on within my system. But you have done what you needed to do, and you can now follow up for results and say, I raised this matter and I want to know what happened about it. So I agree entirely with you. People should look at this system, these Rwandans, this process as state-specific, state-led, and do things that are going to help the Rwandan people without having to cause any problems. Joseph also said that public officials generally like to hear positive things about them. Either people are praising them or they are saying they are good here, they are not, they are doing very good things. Well, I think even when the RC went there, he thanked me. I don't know whether that is the reason. I don't know. But also when I went there, I thanked him. So I think he also loves to hear positive things. So I would want to know which human being in the world that God created, who does not want to hear positive things about them? Or who wakes up in the morning and they want to hear the negative thing they did last night? Let's assume I did some bad things last night and some other good things. Which of those two things would I want to hear in the morning? It's the good ones. I actually wish the bad ones, nobody knew about them. But the fact that that is human nature does not mean that I don't want to hear, even to make corrections, even to make amends on the things that I do that do not, rhyme with everybody. So it is perhaps a human trait that people will want to hear the good things they do. And I think in the art of communication, the little art that I have acquired through my little experience, even in communication, when people start speaking, making speeches, they start with the positives. Then people become happy. Then as they become happy, they start hitting them with the negatives. They start telling them some bad stuff. But since you have already told me the good things, then I think you're a good man. So even the art of communication in the coalition of civil society, in public office, I think even these things we can interact around them even in civil society as part of the mechanism for communication, for successful interaction. Collaboration and cooperation can also be, we can put content inside there and decide that if you're going to meet the Commissioner General of Prisons, the story you're going to start with is that, the whole prison system, the place is clean. Start with that. What's wrong with it? Then when you want to say how many meals do they take, if you have information that they don't eat anymore, start with cleanliness. Then talk about they go to church, they pray. Then there are cases. Then there's online litigation. People can now have their cases online. Then as number 4, say, by the way, Commissioner, do these people eat anymore? I think that's part of the art of communication that civil society can engage with others, rather than now pick it up, send it to a friend in Kampala or Nairobi, to send it to Geneva, to say, you know what, 7,000 prisoners in Rwanda are going to be dead in the next 7 days because they are not eating. You could have done it in a totally different way and got totally different results. So I think it was a lighter response to the issue of human beings, but it affects all of us, but it doesn't at all in any way deter anybody from raising the hard issues with, in an environment. I don't know how I would fail to raise the hard issues with anybody, even those who love the positive things. So I hope there was no other question.
Can you put up the questions? Richard, can you read that?
Yes, this is Richard Kananga. He says, thanks for the important meeting. My contribution is that there is a need to make UPR recommendations be known to the general population and local government so that it becomes a participatory process instead of leaving it to a national level and CSOs. There's a question from Jean Dodier from IDIE.com, who says, through the collaboration and cooperation, there must be trust. Why does civil society seem to be opposing the government?
So another question?
This one is a comment. In the coordination of UPR processes, can Minijust reinforce the justice, reconciliation, law and order sector platform, which could serve as a lens to the promotion and protection of human rights and freedoms from grassroots communities? This also will strengthen collaboration and cooperation. The platform is well designed, but not as active as it should be.
It's more or less same with what Richard asked. So using the dialogue for the grassroots.
About, and I think we need to reinforce, and we are working around certain mechanisms now to reinforce that platform. The fact that it exists is good, but existence alone won't be the result. So we need to work around reinforcing it, and there is already work going on to reinforce it. The other question on why civil society seems to be opposing government, I'm not aware, but I also want to believe that if you are raising issues government is not doing, and you want them to be done for the citizens, maybe someone will define that as opposition, another one will define it as constructive engagement, another one will describe it in another way. So I don't know what the kind of opposition was being referred to.
Let's finish with the chat first, because those guys are not in the room. They've been waiting for so long, so we give them priority. And any other question?
There's more comments. Honorable Minister of Justice and Andrews, congratulations to the discussions. Rwanda One UN Human Rights Task Force under the leadership of the RC and the coordination of the Ministry of Justice will be happy to discuss with the government and CSOs the way forward, the way to engage the whole UN agencies in supporting the UPR recommendations implementations in the coherent and coordinated manner.
I guess this from the Human Rights Advisor.
It's called COMI.
From
Yeah,
COMI,
thank you,
yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are new messages.
Yes, I'm reading them all.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister and UNRC for your insightful remarks. The UPR process provides indeed an opportunity for all stakeholders, whether state or non-state actors, to contribute to the promotion of human rights and sustainable human development. This collaboration with the CSO coalition is a good practice.
Okay. Go ahead.
There's one last comment. Actually, it's the same one. Komi, he posted it twice. So there are no new
There
comments.
seems to be new messages that have not been read. Is it? On the Q&A also. There is some. Oh, there is this one. I
It's
think
been
this is-
recent, yes.
Okay. How about Q&A? Oh, that was from Richard.
The other one.
All right, thank you very much. We can now go back to the room. Dr. Aphrodis and Mugisha first.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your wise guidance on how we should communicate both the civil society and media. And of course, that is what they call objective and balanced reporting and communicating. I think that should be taken seriously so that you get to collaborate effectively. I would wish to also assert that within this collaboration, we need also the media, because we talk of the CSOs and the states, but the media may come in to also be a catalyst within this whole setup. First, as an educator on UPRs, moderator, advocator, and to monitor and to contribute in engaging the public. But Honorable Minister, we've been having issues of concern when it comes to the implementation of the access to information law, which is one of those tools that the state has given the media, both from the constitution and on the specific laws. When it comes to practice, you find that most journalists are being hindered, and yet it is from using this tool that they can be more effective in having their role well and effectively, carried out. So I would wish to hear from you, Honorable Minister, how best can we work on this so that the law becomes vibrant, becomes relevant, other than having the good laws in the shelves. We've been having campaigns, of course, with RGB, Office of the Ombudsman, trying to change the mindset, but we've not seen the progress that we wish to see. So we'd wish to hear from you how we can do this better. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for the first comment. And actually, the media is one of the specific groups we have earmarked to begin these consultations, specific consultations with. We have decided that the media should be at the first or one of the first. So I think we will be contacting the media very, very shortly. Access to information. From my side, I would say, I would look at the journey. We never had the law. The law came in force, and I think it was through a process that the media campaigned for, campaigned with through government departments, through the relevant institutions in government, parliament, and in the end, we had an access to information law. I don't know whether it needs amendment now or how, because it's been out there for a while. That is a different story. But the way you have mentioned the institutions that are supposed to be overseeing how we deliver on the services to the public, the Rwanda Governance Board, the Office of the Ombudsman, those are the, I don't know whether there is any other specific office in charge of that, but even other oversight officers in the country can always take up these matters relating to challenges of access to information by those who want information and those who need to have the information. So working through the Office of the Ombudsman, working through the Office of the RGB, working through any other oversight institutions that we have, I think should produce results. And the challenges you are meeting, I think, you wouldn't say it is like a cooperative effort that the whole government is at the same level, responding same way. It's like someone wakes up in the morning and calls all of us and says, you guys, if a media person calls you, don't answer. Don't do this. No, it's not happening that way. I think there are institutions which easily cooperate with the media. There are others which slowish. There are others which did it many years before even the access to information law came in force, and so on. So it's not a general policy or a general trend or general problem. But even that one or two or three problems that there are, I think the Office of the Ombudsman, the Rwanda Governance Board, and the other oversight institutions that we have should really be your interlocutors in working with government institutions on the challenges you meet in implementing the access to information law. my view is that the access to information law is not about journalists. It is about the public. It is about Rwandans getting the information they need to have so that they are engaged, so that they can ask the questions they need to ask, so that they know what is going on in the things that they live with in the country. So I have read somewhere in the papers about the Office of the Ombudsman engaging with the media about this specific issue, with RGB about this specific issue. And I think that is the right course of action. Obviously, like many other things that are achieved over time, the only thing that can happen is to have a catalyst that makes it happen quicker. So the Ombudsman, the RGB, the oversight institutions can probably push it to push us to attention, because the Ombudsman tells us to do something at the Ministry of Justice and we don't do it. The next thing we hear, we will be in Parliament, or we will be sent to the Prime Minister to explain why we are not doing something. So keep doing it, keep engaging. I think one of the areas that has been growing exponentially is the media space and the media content and the media practitioners. I think there has been a lot of growth there. There is still a long way to go, but keep going. Don't give up. Keep going. What you have achieved probably is a lot, although you still have another long way to go. So use those institutions. They will bring all public institutions to attention. They will communicate in writing. They will communicate in their own way, the way we relate to each other, and things will change. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. One last question in the room. And please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Minister. I also had a quick reflection. It's probably a follow-up of the discussion we are having. From my experience, I wanted to highlight that as much as government position is very clear, maybe policy documents are very clear, I want us to come back to the individual capacity. If today Minister Businje understands human rights, maybe because he has had the privilege of going through the law school and understanding everything, another public official may not have the same capacity. And we've had sessions where, just because of my own personal understanding, and that's why when we're talking about opposing government, sometimes it's very difficult. Does it mean if I disagree with the Minister Businje, have I disagreed with the government? Or it's an individual who may be not understanding the big picture. And what I've seen, that has a lot of impact. I mean, it has a lot of effect on whatever happens. We've had, if today I'm appointed, say, Minister of Education, and I don't believe in sexuality, and then someone brings a debate of condoms in schools, you may meet a person who says, stop that debate, because of my understanding. But what I have seen again is that if you're informed, you can disagree. And then one thing I like with the Minister of Justice, let me not personalize it, is say, bring it out, let's have a conversation. But not everyone has the courage to say that. So when we set the position of government, and I'm happy that you've highlighted that you represent the government, and that's the position of government is debate, and that's how the policies are. So I don't know, moving forward, how we can put in some investment in building the capacity, of course, of civil society, to know that if I know what government policy is talking about, I can disagree with the minister and I still continue doing my work. I can disagree with the public official and still continue the debate and bring out the issues, as long as you've worked on the gaps And of course, you're able to communicate them in a way that's not threatening, you're not opposing, but you start maybe by appreciating, and then you're able to bring up this issue. So we need, of course, capacity building within. I have personally had experiences where we've raised issues that were not really very welcome, but we kept doing the work. And so we've seen the change. We've seen the change on access to safe abortion. We've seen the change on decriminalization of sex work. We've seen laws being changed on. I remember when the conversation came to decriminalize the same-sex relationship, and the debate was there and the issue was removed. So I know the ongoing debate. So as civil society, we can have the courage to do the work that we're supposed to be doing. But what I wanted to ask Mr. Businje is, how do we create spaces? I don't know if it's a training or I'm figuring out, is it these public officials being part of these spaces and understanding that civil society is not there to oppose, critique someone who tells you the gap is not there to oppose you, but is helping you to think more. How do we ensure that public officials can also build their capacity? I'm assuming that if we had all the UPR institutions, all the institutions that are supposed to implement UPR, being in this space and they hear the conversations, next time when you're saying I'm following up on this, they won't see you as someone who is trying to create a space you don't own. They won't see you. And again, I have seen also situations where even people in the same institution have different understanding. Being appointed a government official, a minister, or doesn't mean that in one night where the yellow paper comes out, you become the smartest person. So we need to know that we're representing government and we are working for people, and we have to be guided by government policy. Individual, you saw what happened in the neighboring country when someone became president and everything all of a sudden changed. Individual capacity, my own exposure. What does our society want? What do policies talk about? So I think the main, for me, my request would be capacity building. Sometimes we only think about civil society, capacity building for civil society, but we need also to think about capacity building. I don't know, some people hate to say being trained, but it can even be creating spaces where we can have these conversations. And I think this would have a lot of improvement in terms of trust building. Trust is very, very important. If I think you're coming to destroy everything I've worked on, or by raising an issue, you're exposing the good work that you have done, I may not open up. So if we can create these spaces and build the capacity of public officials from the high level and have conversations, I think we can have a more collaborative framework that allows all of us to contribute to the advancement of rights, the advancement of whatever we want to achieve. I believe and agree that this is going to be continuous progressive work. We cannot say we have achieved, because when you have food, you need something else. We have to keep today. If we are looking at the standard of prisons today, in the next 20 years, we'll be looking at other things. I've been looking at some of the prisons in some of the countries. You can't even know that they are prisons. There are some of them are even better than some of our homes. And I think progressively, we're going to keep demanding for that. We're going to keep asking. But we have to work together, and we have to be open on allowing critique to see the gaps so that we can be able to improve. Even for me, when the government says we have supported these recommendations, we have noted. For me, I think that's already very great, that these issues, they could be pending, they could be in between, but maybe the next 5 years we'll report on them. Maybe the next 5 years, even before, we've seen also situations where even before those 5 years, something becomes very important. I remember one of the issues on human trafficking, the previous recommendations, and then we realized this is an issue, and then it can always come back and be worked on, and we work to improve it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Minister.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You raised many points. I'm not sure that I will remember them. But a couple of things. Some kind of personal experience. Legal Aid Forum, not Andrews, but Legal Aid Forum. Over the last couple of years, they have put us under a lot of pressure to have a legal aid law. A lot of pressure. Sometimes I thought I was going to lose a friend called Andrews Kananga from Legal Aid Forum. Then whenever we meet, I actually ask him, do I still have you as a friend? Do we still work together? Then he says, yeah, we are still moving together. In spite of all these things I'm not doing, yeah, he says, yeah. But I think the reason we we continue moving is we also try and put up some kind of counter argument that when he goes home and he consults with back to Legal Aid Forum and he consults with everybody, they say, okay, maybe let's keep going. We'll pressure him again, or we'll pressure these people again. So we say, look here, if we have a legal aid law, it's going to subject, since we have like 60,000 cases per year, assuming 40,000 are indigent, that means we need like 80,000 lawyers, one side and the other side. And if we have 80,000 lawyers and each lawyer needs 500,000 and is from government coffers, that is about 80,000 lawyers times 500,000. I don't know how many millions of money. I am not yet sure that our budget can pick that up. The second argument is I go through the world very quickly and I found how many countries out of 193 countries, how many have a legal aid law? I find there are very, very few, less than 20. Then I say I'm still within 170 countries who don't have a legal aid law. Then I also say we have now a policy. Let us review the policy, make sure that we access Rwandans who are indigent and try to help them through civil society, Legal Aid Forum. Let's support their programs. Let's push everybody else who is in the area of legal aid support. So one day when we have a law, it will not be something from the sky falling down. It will be a continuation of something that is already happening. So that is my experience with him. I don't count him as an opposition figure at the Ministry of Justice. He's not an opposer, but we keep going together. Another one, a group of diplomats, I think from the EU at some point, came to the ministry to say, look here, there is this convention on enforced disappearance, which you guys are not signing up to. Yet Rwanda is known, you have signed up to so many conventions, so they praised me a lot. Then they said, how about this one? Then I told them, look, I have been reading this convention and I am also stationed in the Great Lakes area. This Great Lakes area, this Rwanda is a place where if you sign up to this convention, you might start having problems to answer that you can never even control. Then I told them, look, the other day when we brought thousands of people from, I think 2 years ago, from DRC, who are CNRD, FDLR, and a combination of United Nations and DRC brought about probably more than 2,000 people. And they were all stationed in Mutobo and another camp in Chagu. When we went to talk to them, over 400 of them had gone there recently. Just go out of Rwanda and go there. So then later on, these groups which were fighting us in southwestern Rwanda, FLN, RNC, all these groups which are in the court now, all these ones were here, were in town. Then they disappeared. Then I told these ambassadors, look, the day I sign on this, all these guys who are in these bushes in DRC, they will be on the list of people who have disappeared. So how am I going to answer for people who simply cross one border and the next day they will, and the moment we sign up, that is the first thing they will do. The moment they cross a border, they will send a message to Geneva that so-and-so has disappeared. Not say, I have disappeared. They will say, so-and-so has disappeared. So I told them, look, what we want to do is not just about Rwanda. It's a Great Lakes thing. We are trying to stabilize the situations in all these countries so that we can account for each other. But if you sign up on that convention and you can't account, for the citizens in your country, then every other day you are going to be answering questions. So I don't know whether I convinced them, but I think some of them were convinced. Then we said, therefore, it's not a closed book. It's not a closed issue. It's an issue we understand. This is a convention that is out there. It protects people. But at the same time, inherent in it, there are problems we cannot risk right now because we will fail to control them. So what I'm trying to say after this is two things. One is the engagement, which I think helps to build. I don't know whether I would recommend taking public officials into training, but I believe that those kinds of engagements are training in themselves. But the other thing that I think civil society can actually actively engage in is how are we building these institutions? How are we building on the policies and programs, and in the end, they become an institution. And that means if it is an institution, it is no longer dependent on Aphrodis because he is the head of the institution. When he leaves, whoever comes in, there will be where they stopped and where they are headed in terms of the policy, in terms of the institution. And therefore, if you are talking about sexuality in schools, if you are talking about GBV, if you are talking about the policy on whatever it is, environmental protection, protecting degradation, wetlands, and so on, then people understand that it's not about the person who is in office. Protection of wetlands is a government policy, it is institutionalized. We know people should not get titles to go and build in a wetland. If they get a title to go and build in a wetland, if you have noticed in the new land law, whoever gives you the title will be wrong and that title will have no use. And you who has a title and you go and build inside Lake Muhazi, we will simply come and pull down your house. So it doesn't matter that someone gave you a title to go and build, authorization to go and build inside Nyabugogo area or whatever. The city or town will pull down your house, and then you deal with the person who gave you authority to build inside that swamp or that wetland. So what I'm trying to drive at is, and that civil society can engage with us, is how are we building these institutions to outlast us? Because what we are sure about, whether you are in the civil society office, whether you are in the public office, even in the UN office, they will leave. The individuals will leave. But when they leave, those who come in, are they going to change everything the following day? Are they able to change everything the following day? Or are they going to find where implementation has reached and therefore proceed from there? So I want to believe that civil society, and I thought about it from here, it's not like I've been thinking about it over the years. I haven't heard of many civil society organizations which actually go into the area of institutionalizing things, asking us questions. How are you institutionalizing these things so that when you are not there, life will continue? How are you institutionalizing, in HDI? You are doing so many good things, but are we able to know now that they are dependent on Aphrodis, or they are dependent on an institutionalized culture, policies, and so on? So when Aphrodis is no longer there, we can expect that HDI will continue doing the things HDI is doing. If never again will collapse because Joseph has left, then Joseph is never again. It is not working for never again. Joseph has become never again. So I think one of the things that civil society can start engaging us on is that one. And the third point I want to make is that I believe, I might be wrong here, might be going in uncharted territory. What is the boundary between civil society and government in terms of individuals? And I always ask this question whenever I have an opportunity. When I'm at home on Saturday, what am I? Am I civil society? Am I government? When there is Muganda and we all walk out, we go to do a road or to fix something happening, and I mobilize everybody to come out of their homes, and after that we do a meeting and we look at what is going on. Who would legitimately say I am not civil society on that day? And I always have the same question, it's on an unrelated matter, on who is a human rights defender. If I stand up and I defend the rights of my mother tomorrow, someone is trying to violate them. Am I a human rights defender by that action? Or you have to do 100 actions, or you have to declare, you swear an oath that makes you a human rights defender. So at what point does someone qualify to be a human rights defender? Not a member of a human rights organization, but a human rights defender. So these are questions when there is time, I would join your groups so that I can learn. I want to learn some of these things. So civil society, I want to suggest that part of the approach you use with government or with other actors, always relate to them. Always tell them, we are with you. We are the same with you. We are simply doing a specific role, an intervention on this area, but we are the same citizens of the same country. We serve the same people. We serve the same constitution. We agree that we must have a life and improved life. Only that you, man, today you are seated in that minister's office, and me, I'm seated at HDI. Tomorrow it could be this. You might be seated at HDI and I'm seated here. So, and there will not be change of DNA. There will be no change of blood systems. We will still be same Rwandans serving same people. So I don't know whether I'm making this point better than as well as I wanted, but I would suggest that civil society, unlike in many other countries, where civil society over time tends to become opposition, and not just the opposition party, which is known and it is their leader of opposition is on. So it simply becomes, it is in between. It's not government, it's not opposition, but it is somewhere. And I think it is, in order to have its own niche, it does, the requirement used to be some time ago, used to be that you have to distinguish yourself by some kind of aggression, some kind of drama, some kind of, you know, if you are assessed to be agreeing, to be condoning, or to be supportive, then someone will say, that one is not a good civil society. And if they were actually giving you money, they reduce the money. They just say, we can't give you money. But I want to believe that civil society, at the end of the day, when we go home, we belong to this same country. We have the same aspirations, we have the same dreams, we have the same, you know, destination. Our destiny is tied together. You are simply doing a role and I'm doing another role, but our destiny is tied together. What makes Rwanda happy will make you happy. What makes Rwanda unhappy will make even civil society unhappy. I don't think that that cannot be, that isn't the truth. So if you approach with that approach, and I'm just suggesting it, I don't want to impose it. Maybe there will be time to have a conversation around it. If you approach in that kind of way, say, you man, Mr. Hussein, I'm together with you. These cows I'm talking about, the rights of these cows, even your own cows are there. I'm not just talking about rights of cows in the sky, rights of young girls. You also have young girls. We are talking about the same human beings. We are talking about the same things. And we see things the way we see them because This is what our area of intervention. So you should support us because you are a legitimate beneficiary. You are a legitimate beneficiary. So that in the end, this borderline that divides civil society and government, people start not paying too much attention to it. Instead, they pay attention to what is the content of what this group is saying, rather than saying, these are the other side, me, I'm the other side. These are the other side, me, I'm the other side. Rather than do that, we would end up having our heads of department focusing on the content of what the group is saying, rather than going in this traditional boundary that makes you the other side and makes government the other side. So Andrews, can't we wind up?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. We have other questions, but they are general, and some of them have already been covered. So we won't go to that. We have Janvier from, I think, UN Women, who is suggesting that government and civil society should be working together. We have someone asking a question about historical marginalized people. I think you already have a plan of engaging specific groups. I think his was about how the group can also be, as a specific group, how their rights can be, I mean, as a group, it can be supported. I think this also has been coming since 2011. The other one is about Jean Dodier. He's also talking about cooperation and working together. I don't think we need, finally, maybe RC will have a few words to say before, and then we conclude the session.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was really very interesting discussions, and Minister was asking about not getting a question, but I do think that as it is state-led, and there is a unique opportunity also for people to get engaged at this early stage of implementation. I do think that the conversation was very good. I have the following comments. One is, really, I do really want to highlight that if we all are committed to support people, what would be the difference in the way that we do it? Even if you go to the UN Charter, the UN Charter is not saying we the government. The first sentence is we the people. So meaning not only the people are the end beneficiaries and users, but the people are also actors in the process. So it is important that we ground all what we are doing on engaging the people, on getting them committed and leaving no one behind. And that's, if we have that ground, process, systems and institutions might differ, but the end results would be how you build a stable, cohesive, peaceful, inclusive society, where everyone will find its own or his or her own opportunities to thrive, build prosperity, and contribute to society. Could be from the private sector perspective, it could be from the civil society perspective, it could be any other way, faith-based organization and others. That's number one. Number two, I think the aspect of localizing the UPR is very important. How do we get it to the people? Not only understanding, as it was mentioned, but holding us accountable, monitoring what's happening. So maybe in the platform or any other way, having surveys or getting people's voices on how we are implementing and how it could be improved, adjusted, and how they are feeling in their day-to-day life as improvement happening in the process of implementing UPR will be very important. So the district, the community, the sectors, the villages, all those should be, involved in that process. Number three, and that's why I mentioned the whole of government and whole of society approach. But in the whole of government approach, I'm sure, Minister, you have considered that. But maybe in the engagement with the specific group, they should not be seeing only the Minister of Justice. I know that it's not your approach. You are a whole of government. Let's say that we discuss rights of children. I want to see with you, ministers or high government officials from institutions involved in that aspect being part of. This will relate to what Doctor was saying on this, dialogue between all of them, and it is also an engagement curve that will develop there as well, so that it would be really. The third is what you mentioned, Minister, on the, always within the UN, I dislike the word capacity building. They know me for that, because I always talk about institution and system buildings. Institution and system, you are tapping on three aspects. You are tapping on principles, on people, and processes. And that's where it is sustainable. Then you can have, this is what my organization wants to achieve on this function, on this mandate, on this, and on the scale of 1 to 5, this is what my organization is now. Let's say we are 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, and you tailor, a process of building the capacity of that institution, and you evaluate. Maybe next year it will be 4, it will be 3, and then you continue. And that's a way that it will really stand and it will make tangible impact, because it's grounded on building institution and system, rather not belonging, to one person or a group of persons. And I think that that's the way I do think. The fourth is, if I were in the coalition, I like really division of labor. It would be good as your coalition to look at this recommendation and maybe have a grouping. I'm sure you plan to do that. Have a grouping and have clear research and assessment of what's happening in that. Let's say that we talked about the media sector, and you look at the grouping around the media, not only the media group, but all the actors that have their say in the media group, be it the public, be it the government, be it the private sector. They all have something to do with communicating the right way. Then that group would really look at and deep dive in these issues, not only on the surface that this is the recommendation, but how do we make it tangible, and how do we make sure that could be smart, and so that we could monitor and report. And by the same token, it will help also these actors strengthen their institutions, because they will be having that. And that's an area I discussed in this with Rwanda Civil Society platform. And I told them that if you are really want to move forward in this influence and policies and strategies, you yourself need to master that. You cannot do it on perception that the government is not doing. You need to research, you need to have evidence, so that when you are discussing with people, they will know that you are coming from strong hold. Not only, rumors. It seems that Rwanda is not doing well here and there, but why and how it happens, and what are the way forward. And that's the way I think we should be engaging on this, not only UPR, but all the policy strategies in which you could be providing strong, support. Fourth or fifth, I think the way I'm seeing is that mutual accountability and mutual monitoring. I think the accountability mechanism that would be transparent, showing every actor what is its role and how that actor is discharging its role is important. Because in the end, it's all about people and the purpose. And all your organizations should be purpose-driven. What is the purpose of your organization in achieving this and that? And how you position yourself in fulfilling that purpose. And by the same token, helping people to thrive and so on. So let me end by thanking you. And I say that in all these matters, you can count on the UN coming in a coherent and coordinated manner in order to support the civil society organization, the government, and all the actors, of course, hand in hand with all the development partners, some of them presently here and others connected, and with whom we are working very well in supporting. Because human rights, it's all about us, as Minister mentioned. It's about me. It's about you. As Hemingway said, don't ask yourself for whom rings the bell. It rings for all of us. So make sure that it rings the right song for all of us. And that's why we see the coalition building that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, RC. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for spending time with us. Definitely, I don't just want to repeat what has been said. It is really very important. And we want this kind of cooperation to continue as we continue working with the department to draw the roadmap. And then I hope we have already dived into implementation already. So we'll continue engaging you, and thank you for making time to be here. And on behalf of the coalition, we're very happy, and thank you for your time. RC, thank you very much for also showing up all the time. I know your office is very keen on human rights issues, not only by your attendance with these events we organize, but also the support through UN agencies that we get. Also the remarks you've just made, we count on you. We'll continue engaging and working with you. And thank you very much. So this is the end of this session. I don't know what is, we're running behind time, but I can assure the audience we'll catch up. I mean, most of the things we wanted to talk about or we'll be talking about in the sessions have already been touched on. So we'll endeavor to make the next sessions very brief. Thank you very much. Over to you, Leonis, if you want to give updates on what is next.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, and Your Excellency, RC, and the Executive Director, as well as you distinguished participants for being very, very engaging. We apologize for being behind the times, but as the Director said, I want to reassure you that the next sessions will be very brief. And that being said, let's go for a very quick coffee break, just 5 minutes, stretch our legs. You can grab your coffees and snacks, bring them inside, and we'll start right away with the first panel. Thank you. We're going to reflect on the same issues as before, just that the order in which they're going to take place has changed.
All right. And how much time do they have? Because time has been reduced.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. So for this panel discussion, we'll do a 5 minutes question for each panel, where each panel will answer a question, then we'll move into the Q&A. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our panelists for today for this discussion, Ms. Brenda Kaitesi, the program coordinator at Human Rights First Rwanda, and Maître Christian Garuka, an expert in UPR and a human rights lawyer. Welcome. So without further ado, I'll just go straight to the panel discussion. Our panel discussion for today will be focused on reflecting on women and children's rights and rights of other specific groups in light of the 2021 UPR recommendations. Rwanda has made significant positive strides in the promotion of gender and equality and women's empowerment. Women representation in decision-making positions makes Rwanda the world leader in terms of women in parliament. Moreover, Rwanda has put in place laws with heavy penalties for gender-based violence, sexual violence, including child defilement, as well as put in place mechanisms to prevent GBV. Yet in the second and most recent UPR cycle, there were still recommendations in this area. My question will go to Brenda. What is missing as far as the prevention and response to GBV and sexual violence are concerned?
Thank you very much, Emily, for that question. And I think we'll just get straight to the answer because the Honorable Minister kind of touched into the previous recommendations and where we are right now. And as you said, in terms of women and children's rights and GBV, most especially, and SGBV, this issue keeps on coming back. And you've just mentioned that we have laws, we have policies in place, we have institutions, we have measures, and I think that is not something that we can go back to. Everyone in the room and those following online know that we have the laws, and the government has really, really done a tremendous job in ensuring that this issue is dealt with the most strictest laws and mechanisms, as we said. And some of those laws, I don't think I'm going to go into that because the time is very short. But we've also had state and non-state actors working together, both government and CSOs and other development workers, in terms of raising awareness, in terms of educating the community, in terms of provision of legal aid services for GBV victims. We have the Sange one-stop centers. We know that as of this moment, we have 44 countrywide. So a lot is really being done. But like you said, the issue is still on the rise. And as of the last report we submitted, according to RIB in 2018, there were 13,800 plus cases. And these cases increased in 2019 to 19,000 plus. And we've also had a number of cases that have been received by MASH, those that have been taken to court. And we've seen an increase in terms of people coming and reporting. So I'd say that from this report and many more that we are not able to see here, but can be accessed through different platforms, the issue has really been tackled, but then it's still ongoing. And as we are all aware with COVID-19, I'm imagining, and we've already had reports that the issues is also, the cases are increasing. So from my perspective, I think that the reason this issue is insisting, the reason there's still a gap is because of the patriarchal system. And it's something that we deal with every day. We work on gender equality, but still we have a very strong culture that is enshrined in even our belief systems, how we think, how the gender norms are divided. And even though we conduct many awareness campaigns, even though we educate people, even though we raise all these awareness issues, I think the power imbalance still results in GBV not being dealt with as it should. So this is an issue that still needs a lot of work. And as the Honorable Minister said, we cannot say we've done 100%. This is an ongoing issue and will continue to be an ongoing issue, because as long as we deal with the Rwandan culture, It's not going to just go away. We've worked on Men Engage, and we've seen many men coming on board, trying to work with us on this, but it's still a big issue. So I think all the stakeholders are aware of this, and it's something that will continue to be worked on. Another point I'd like to raise that I see as an issue is lack of family dialogues. We tend to talk about community dialogues, but we all know charity begins at home. And from the discussions we've had with some of the young people, they've raised the issue that in terms of parents talking, discussing with their children, educating them on sexuality, on some of these issues that are out there, how to protect themselves from GBV, how to report these cases, how to identify cases or perpetrators. That is not something that we tend to talk about in our homes. So we do community dialogue. We have and all youth dialogues, which from my perspective are not also enough. So we need to increase efforts in community dialogue, but then follow up. Are these community dialogues also trickling down to our families back at home, so that our children are well aware of these things, so that parent to children dialogue is also, because there's also this perception that most of the time, even when we do Mugoroba Day, the man goes to one side, or maybe the woman goes to one side, or maybe they're not even together. Then how is it that, how are we ensuring that what we're educating them at the community level will impact the family and thus impact the community? So I think that is key. And also in terms of dialogue, what is the message that we are telling the young people, or we are speaking about? In Rwanda, we have this, sex is a taboo. Some of these issues are taboo. Even if we go for Mugoroba Day or so, some of the things that we talk about really don't touch on some of these issues. Sexuality education, are we really open with the children and the young people on these issues? So I think, how are we packaging the information that we are putting out there in those community dialogues? So the persistent culture of silence, that is something everyone knows about, and it's still an issue in terms of dealing with cases of GBV. And from my perspective, when I saw that the number of GBV recommendations had increased, and from dialogues with other partners, it came to attention that these cases have increased because now people, because of knowing their rights, are more willing to speak out. But we still have a long way to go in terms of fighting the culture of silence, which is very prevalent in our culture in terms of when we talk about domestic violence, when you talk about marital rape. Those are cases that you rarely hear. And even if they're heard, most times the victims are afraid to speak out because of the economic dependency or other issues in stigma, fear of stigma, and being victimized again. So all of these are things that we need to continue efforts in education, sensitization, and stuff like that. And also, finally, I'd just say, we need to encourage peer-to-peer education or dialogue for youth, by youth themselves, to talk about these issues, through experience sharing. I'm thinking that they'll be able to open up, because some of the times we have dialogues and you find it's a youth dialogue, but they still don't feel that the space is there. They're not the organizers, they're not the conveners maybe, and they're not the ones talking about the issues. Sometimes we tend to enforce our issues, our beliefs on them, and that is still a problem. So I think those are some of the key points I can mention here, but it's an ongoing effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Those are really important points. Actually, speaking about marital rape, recently we did an awareness session and we didn't realize that a lot of people didn't know that marital rape was actually a thing. or an offense that is penalized by the law. So thank you. Moving on, so I'm going to ask the next question to Christian. Rwanda has put in place legal and institutional frameworks that govern the right of persons with disabilities. However, in 2015, during the second UPR cycle, as well as this year, various recommendations were made in relations to the right of persons with disabilities. What is your take on these recommendations?
Thank you very much for having me. As you have said, Rwanda has made progress in terms of the rights of people with disabilities. We have to take note that Rwanda enacted a law on the right of persons with disabilities before even ratifying the Convention on the Right of People with Disability. That was a good step. Also, we have seen in the Constitution the prohibition of discrimination based on someone's disability status. We have seen the representation of people with disability in the parliament. However, on the other side, what I have noted is we still have a problem with the issue of reasonable accommodation. Is still lacking, as the law prohibits any kind of discrimination, but in practice, we don't have a way to accommodate the needs of persons with disabilities. In terms of access to justice, we know persons with disability, like any other Rwandan citizen, they have the right to a fair trial, justice, to make it simple. But we don't have the mechanisms to help them to get these rights. Those with visual impairments, they can't have access to their judgments. We don't use braille. That's an example. Also, if you go to the health sector, you go to different sectors, we still lack means to accommodate their grievances, paying particular attention to their needs. The law is there, but I think what is missing is just to make sure that our current legal framework complies with the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability. And also, what is also critical from my perspective is the kind of a stereotype person with disability still face on their daily experiences. That's probably an area which needs to be looked up. And also, what I'm also thinking as an issue which needs to be addressed is the involvement of persons with disability more often. As in sometimes we have seen cases where even ourselves who have been struggling, think out the whole group should be put in the same category, forgetting that the group is so diverse, people with disability. And also in our laws, we still have some pejorative words, but I think that should not be an issue when it comes to reform, to make sure that we use appropriate words to avoid this kind of stigma, which might be caused by the use of pejorative words. Having said that, I'm still optimistic that there's a political will in addressing those issues I've just mentioned. So we still have some work to do on that, but I'm still optimistic that in the next cycle of the UPR, we might not have similar comments on recommendation on the person with disabilities. As the first cycle, we did not have any single recommendation on this particular group, but we had during the second cycle, we have 2, but this time we had more than 2 recommendations. So probably this an area which should be given a particular attention.
when we'll be trying to implement the recommendations we received from the UPR working group. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Christian. I'd like to ask if anyone in the audience would like to ask a question to the panels, or anyone on the platform. Yes, Director.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you, our esteemed panelists. I want if Ms. Brenda can address this. I remember in the assessment we did last year, and of course, the beginning of this year, before we submitted the report, there was something, I mean, there's something that keeps coming about the number of women participating in, I mean, rural women participating in decision-making. I'm sure as everyone does here, that the country has made progress in terms of women empowerment. We have the highest representation, as you just told us and gave the figures. How about the rural women or women at decentralized levels? Is it the same? What is your take on that? Because I remember there was a finding that indicated that there is low participation of rural women. You understand what I'm saying?
Thank you for that question. And yes, that is one of the areas we assessed in terms of women participation and in leadership position. So yeah, in terms of at the national level, we are doing very well. And with Parliament, I think at this point we're at 64%, if I'm not mistaken, 61, 64%. We also have women in the judiciary. We've talked about that in terms of Maj, Avunzi, the number is coming up, but we still have a long way to go in terms of at the decentralized level. We found that the issue in terms of district mayors is low for women. And the number at that point was 16.7. And we also found that the number goes up and down once in a while. And of recent, we've had some governors, women governors being put into office. And the National Women Council also has had trainings in terms of empowering women so that they can be more confident to go into these leadership positions. But one of the issues we raised at that point was even if we have the few we have, you find them more in social affair positions.
What is preventing them from taking those positions? Definitely, it's not the policy, it's not the law.
It's not the
Is it
policy.
the mindset you talked about earlier? Or?
It's the mindset, and I think the fear. There's and also in terms of there was an issue that was raised, women saying they have less time to participate in some of these positions or campaigns to raise their awareness or raise the, for example, we talked about unpaid care work. Most of the women spend more time dealing with family issues, home issues, and most of the women doing agricultural work, they don't get time to get involved in other issues. And also the fear that they are not, I think the fear that they may not be the right people to be in that position. Like I was saying, if you find more women are in social affairs, it's more of a softer area than economic. So we find more men are in some of the positions that are kind of seen as tough, yet women are in social affair, nurturing kind of positions. So they fear standing up for these positions. And so we found that a lot of trainings have been being done, but still even the trainings they don't yield much. Yeah. And in the private sector, we found that they also, in terms of president position, there are few, but in vice president positions is where you find many women. So taking the lead role is not something that you see. And we attribute that to the fear, lack of confidence in themselves, and maybe, as we were talking about, the gender norms, feeling like this is not something that is meant for me. I'm more suited for this other area.
That's true. But I'm also thinking about the GBV issue that keeps coming. You know, you talked about figures, 13,000, and I'm thinking going forward with maybe also Christia can chip in or even the audience. If we really want to eradicate GBV, we may not be able to eradicate it completely, but I think something has to be done if figures keep increasing. Christia, do you see a link between economic empowerment and the fight, especially for young women for women and girls, economic empowerment for them as a tool that can help curb the rise of GBV?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question to try to see if really we have the economic empowerment of women would trigger some kind of changes as the way people perceive GBV. Well, that might not be the magic bullet, but it could be one of the contributions because I still believe as long as we don't eradicate gender stereotype, we are likely to experience GBV. Just a quick example. In the last 20 years in Rwanda, we have never had a male minister of Mijeprof. People will just think that's ministries for women. Just an example. I remember some years ago, I was in Nigeria with the UNAIDS, and my position was human rights and gender advisor. So whenever I was invited in some meetings in Nigeria, so people they were struggling with my name. Christian, some used to think was a woman. And then when I would introduce myself, people would always raise their eyebrows. They say, so how come in the UNAIDS they failed to identify a competent woman to hold this position? So that tells you a lot. You look at in Tanzania as well, with the new president. She had to remind the Tanzanians that she's now the president. So I think for us to really address the issue of GBV, we should should go hand in hand in addressing gender stereotype. We might have laws, but as long as we still have these kind of stereotypes,
are these stereotypes visible publicly out there? Because with the strong legal framework, I mean, just give us examples. I know it's one of the reasons that people keep advancing for us to be able to fight GBV, and I really want to believe that is true. But are they really visible in our society? Maybe, I don't know.
Yes.
Or it's something that we believe in, it has been like that, it has, because really the government has tried, we're all trying. I know many of you are working on these issues, and we keep saying about stereotypes. You have examples. It sounds, when you talk about that, it sounds like very, very serious. And some of those maybe can breed, can cause crime, and then they can be punished.
I think we can look at it in two ways. It's visible to an extent, but it's also invisible. It's visible in terms of, like Mr. Christian said, the perception of people, even in workplaces. Yes, there are positions we believe are better suited for men. In Rwanda, even in the world. Yes. Even in our own organizations, if I can say that, civil society, governments, even at home. So it's visible in terms of
even the terminology we use, urumugabo. Ijambo ry'umugabo, okay, I don't know, but they're already, it's visible in terms of, let's say I see a woman driving a tractor. I'm like shocked. If I see a woman doing something that is heavy duty, I find it a bit questionable. Yet she's doing the same thing that a man may do, or she may even do it better. So we stereotype and say this is meant for this and this is meant for that. And sometimes it's invisible in the sense that we are not even realizing that we do it ourselves. So, and I think the question you asked about economic empowerment, I think in itself is not enough. We can empower women, but as long as there's that mindset that men are meant for these women. I've had it said out here many times that you find a powerful woman outside, but when she reaches home, things change. Even her, she might feel powerful in one's environment, but when she reaches another environment, she feels limited by that perception. I remember even recently when the president of Tanzania, they would show videos of her seated with other co-wives. And you'd find people more interested in showing her as a woman, even though she's a president, but she's this. And so that mindset is a big thing. So even if we empower people economically, GBV will still continue because the mindset, the culture, the perceptions is still a big issue.
Thank you, Brenda. Do we have any questions on the platform?
Yes, we do. We have 2 questions.
Okay.
There's a question from Munyeshuri Jean Donald. He says, thank you for this event. There are people who still despise their fellow citizens, not only for the disabled, but also the historically marginalized people, and the government is silent about this group of people. How are we going to make advocacy on these issues? Maitre Garuka, do you have anything to say about this?
Well, we don't have any findings to back up this kind of statement that these people from the historically marginalized have been despised by other people in Rwanda. I think this will be a serious issue, but we need to have tangible evidence for us to make such, to address this kind of statement. I still believe that the current legal framework, especially the constitutions, provides for the empowerment of historically marginalized people. So I will be happy if the person who asked the question will share with us any survey findings, probably to take this issue and probably do some advocacy around.
Brenda, do you have anything to add to this?
Probably, I think the question is a bit ambiguous because when you say despise, in what sense? So maybe an example would be more suitable. And from what I've seen and what I commend our government on doing is in terms of ensuring that respect and promotion of all the rights of all the vulnerable people, in terms of they are all treated the same, we have social protection and all that. Maybe it would be better if there was a clear example on a certain issue or certain example of how they were despised, in what area and how that issue maybe was tackled or not. But at this point, it would be very hard to pinpoint and say, yes, there's an issue here. And yeah.
Thank you. Due to the time constraint, we'll take one last question. The question is, do we have research findings around appreciation of performance of women in their positions? Rwanda is doing well on participation of women in governance positions for sure, and information on how they perform in those positions would be useful. Brenda, do you want to take this
That's
one?
a suggestion, right?
I think that is something that could be taken on board in assessing in the assessment that will be carried out midterm and also in the next 5 years to see. But in our last assessment, we looked in terms of number in participation, but we didn't look in terms of the performance level, and that is something that can be looked into. Thank you.
I don't think there would be something like, let's assess how women are performing as opposed to men, unless we want to assess everyone. So, but anyway, so that would be discrimination again.
That's
So
true. We'll take one last question in the, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, mine is not a question, it's a like comment, just to thank you very much for the panelists on your insightful comments and the topic. Yes, yeah, Brenda, as you have highlighted, the issue of stereotypes and the mindset is still an issue. But if you see, the government received almost 20 or 17 recommendations on GBV. So my question as a government representative is to see what the role of CSOs, you who are involved on daily basis, how can we, what will be, well, we are, as the minister was saying, we are planning to have visits with the specific groups, but maybe it's something that we have, I can just tell you, and then you start reflecting on what you have, or we share we tried to put on roadmap some actions. We don't pretend to exhaust it. We don't think that it's full, but something that we are going to continue to discuss. But already what must, the issue now should be what must be done to really, even if we can't really eradicate or erase 100% the problem of GBV, but what can be done if we compare the measures that are in place, laws that are in place, but why we still have such kind of issues. So maybe with what your findings on the field, with those kind of mindset and what, so you should come out now with like proposals of action, what to be done. And then you can see the cooperation between the government and the civil societies involved in that field, what can be done so we can, when you are going to report in 5 years, at least we say the baseline in 2021, the level of GBV was like 500 cases per year. Maybe in 2026, we have like 100 only. So that's what actually the target that we want to think about it. So, yeah.
Thank you for the suggestion, and I'm sure it will be taken into advisement. We've come to the end of this panel discussion, and we'd like to thank our panelists for the information they shared and for their time, and you for the participation. Thank you. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for this very interesting discussion. We're going to have our second panel right away. They're going to reflect on social and economic rights in light of the 2021 UPR recommendations. Maitre Garuka, I invite you to welcome your panelists and start the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leonie. I'm privileged to moderate the next session. And I've just moved from one position to another. Probably this could be seen as a promotion. But I will not abuse this new position. So I'm very honored to invite Andrews Kananga and Jean-Paul Iwambe to come forward and share their insights on the next topic. A very warm welcome to our panelists. Oh, the Minister of Justice this morning, he touched on many aspects on civil and political rights. But I still have some kind of question. I would like really to get some insight from your side, from the civil society. I would start with Andrews. Rwanda has received several recommendations on access to justice. And we know in the last couple of years, Rwanda has made progress in this area. We have put in place laws, policies, but we still receive some recommendations. That's also valid for conditions on our detention facilities. We have built a new prison, Nyarugenge prison, known as Mageragere. We have renovated some prisons as well. And some might be cynical, might say, do people from Geneva, are they aware of these new developments? Why do they keep coming with these kind of recommendations? What's your take on that? Why do they keep coming with this kind of recommendation, asking for the government of Rwanda to improve the conditions in our detention facilities, improve access to justice? What do you think really is missing?
Thank you very much, Maitre Christian. These are really valid questions, and I think we kind of touched on some of these in the morning. And first of all, I should say, like the minister said, and I also did allude to that, we are bound to receive these comments on any issue as long as we have UPR, because UPR is a mechanism that is looking at improvement. So I'm not guaranteeing the audience that next cycle won't get recommendations on access to justice. Definitely would. But I think the point here is not why are we receiving these recommendations, but what are we doing on these recommendations that we receive, especially those that keep coming, like the legal aid law. The minister did mention that. I don't want to go back to that, although, and he did indicate that I've always deferred on these issues. I feel like the legal aid forum, we feel not me as Andrews, but we feel we should have a legal aid law, and for the good reason, because we have a lot of people needing legal aid. And the ministry knows that this is a problem. I understand the issue of the budget, but that does not mean we should not have a legal aid law. I also understand that we have a legal aid policy, we have some isolated laws that can support provision of legal aid. That's true. But again, we also know that specific groups like children receive legal representation for free. And also people in different categories of Udehe can receive legal aid for free. But it's very expensive. That I don't think if you have to have access to justice, we'll continue, arguing that we don't have enough budgets, that other countries don't have that law. We don't have to have that law because the UK has it. Although I also have my own findings that indicates that a lot of countries actually have the way how their own people access justice like we do. So on that one, I think I differ very much with the ministry, but the good thing I like about this is that we keep engaging. We're working together. We are providing these services. They are also providing through MAJ and other mechanisms. Although we don't have that law, the good news is that we have a mechanism in place to provide legal legal aid and legal representation to the poor and the marginalized. So probably those will keep coming. But the most important thing is, as long as we don't have the law, as long as maybe we don't have resources, they will keep coming. But there are also fundamental other issues that we would love to see. Talk about prison. We're not talking about prison conditions, but we're talking about overcrowding in prisons, which is really very worrying. I haven't checked the latest figures. The last time I checked, I think we had about 80,000 people in prison. And here we're talking about prisons, not police cells, not ribs. I mean, rib cells, because rib now is the one mandated to. So this one, I don't think, of course, having said that, I'm not saying we should not arrest people who commit crimes. They should be arrested, of course. But we should also explore using other avenues provided by the law, alternatives to custodial sentences. I don't understand why putting people in prison when we have other measures would be the first solution, even for people who have committed minor crimes. I've never understood it. And I always discuss this with colleagues. Why don't you use bail? We have a lot of people applying for bail and they're able to pay for that. And you and I are lawyers. We know these things. I'm also glad that the government is, of course, together we're trying to explore how we can reinforce ADR, alternative disposition. I think this issue of overcrowding in prison can be fully addressed. Absolutely. And it's costing us a lot of money. And it can be addressed at the same time as we address crime. Okay? So crime prevention versus crime prevention is something I believe in. But putting people in prison is not like the best deterrence you can ever have in the criminal justice system. There are many avenues provided for by the law. If we had time, we would enumerate them here. So like that one, it's something we can work on in the next, because you are reflecting in relation to 2021 recommendation. This is something that we can deal with. The more people you put in prison, the more resources you have to spend on them. And besides, why did we include bail in our law? Why do we have alternative sentencing that we have? Why don't we use them? So, yeah, that is the question we can discuss as the justice sector. Backlog of cases. This is something we can. It's also another thing that we see that has been coming up, cropping up. People have to wait for their cases to be heard in the next 2 to 3 years. You can speak to that. You go to court more often than me. This is something that we can work on. Why do people have to wait for ages for their trials to happen? Simply because we have few magistrates or yeah. And we have innovation. Of course, as you said, there is a lot of innovation that has been done using ISMS, many other things. Yeah, but sure. I think those are the among many other issues. There are issues that will keep coming, as the minister said, and RC. Otherwise, we can talk. We can. But there are also issues that are really fundamental to human beings, Rwanda, that we can see stop because they are really preventable. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Andrews, for your insights. Now I will move to Jean-Paul Ibambe. I had a conversation with him, and then he told me, I was not aware of that. Before becoming a lawyer, he was a journalist. So he has an interesting story probably to share with us. And my question will touch on the freedom of expression. 2 years ago, we had a landmark judgment from the Supreme Court, which decriminalized the offense of humiliating public officials. That was a very progressive ruling. We have also seen many media outlets. We have had people being more active on the social medias, in YouTube, in Rwanda in the last couple of years. Progress has been made, but we still receive this kind of recommendations on freedom of expression, opinion, freedom of associations, political parties, civil society organizations. We still have these kind of recommendations keep coming. What's your take on that? As both a former journalist and a lawyer, how do you see the situation in Rwanda? And what should be the way forward as well?
Thank you very much. Yes, as you said, we've got progress in as far as freedom of expression promotion is concerned. But of course, we are still having some issues that I can classify into two categories. One is we still have some provisions in our laws that, let's say, for example, you talk about the defamation case, the famous one of Mugisha. So it's, if you look at maybe the laws we have, let me take an example of this law on offenses and penalties in general. So we still have some provision within that law that they don't have like title or provision like this defamation, but you find some, if you look into the particular provision, you find it is still maybe defamation. I'll give you an example. We have an article that punishes publication of edited images and statements. So if you look at the content of the provision of that particular article, it is defamation. That's an example. You talked about humiliation of public officials, president. So we like now we're still having a provision that punishes humiliation of foreign heads of states, representatives of international organizations. So if the Supreme Court has decided to repeat the provision that was about humiliation of public officials, why those ones? So I think on the side of the provisions, we still have some provision that we can judge hindering the freedom of expression. That is one. Second, there is a saying that there is law in books and law in practice. So even if we have some laws, we have some provision, good laws, we have access to information law, for example, but how are we enforcing those laws? On that issue, on that one, we also have issues on how we put into practice the laws we have. Yes, the rights are there and provided for by the law, but are being enforced the way they are provided for. That is another element. But if you look at the recommendations that Rwanda have received in regards to freedom of expression, association, most of them, they are for either strengthening, that means we have something already. They are either for promoting that we have those rights, but maybe the way we are promoting them, it's an issue. Things like public awareness, and some few are about elimination or repealing some of the provisions. So the fact we have these recommendations, as previous speakers have said, it doesn't mean that nothing has been done, but it is also a process, as they say. So I think that's my take on that.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul. Now I'll give the audience a chance to ask a question or make a comment before we look at the screen, if we have any comments from those who are attending virtually. Yes, Mugisha, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I have a question that I would wish that all the civil society members here and state actors would consider very crucial, since we're talking about collaboration and how together we can deal with it. Of course, it's a right-based kind of issue. Today, even the minister was sharing his views about it. We appreciate the fact that with new technologies and digital space opening up for everyone to have their contributions, expressing themselves as the Constitution and other laws in place oblige. But the same platforms have given room for abusers of these rights in their usage. I'll take an example of some of the content we get to see either from those who are using these platforms or those who are sharing their opinions on some of the content that's been uploaded on these platforms. We find that the abuse is very existing and dangerous, whether they're abusing child rights, women rights, obscenity, promoting false news. You know, there are so many issues around that are even affecting some of these rights that we're trying to protect. But less or little is being done by the civil society body, if I may say, the concerned public entities. I'd wish to throw this challenge to all of us. How can we collaborate in trying to deal with the abuse in the usage of these social media tools that help us to express freely and do our best in trying to exercise our rights, but at the same time preserve the responsible usage. It's like killing two birds with one stone, protecting the responsible usage that the Constitution grants every one of us, but also dealing with the abusers. I don't see this as something that the media can deal with, but since civil society, the state, and the media are being seen as collaborators, how can we deal with this so that we don't see the negative effects of this trend harming us in the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mugisha. Anyone else? Do you have a comment on the coming from our panelists? And then let's read them and then we will give the floor to Andrews and Jean-Paul.
We have one question from Lucindi John. He's asking, what are the imaginary fears the institutions have to register some CSOs? Why should we have complaints of associations that fail or take too long to register?
Thank you very much.
I can start with that one.
Yes, I think Andrew can start with this provocative
It's
question.
just imaginary, as you say. Why? And those are some of the things that I'm saying we shouldn't be talking about in 2021. As simple as that. The right of people to associate is a fundamental right provided for by our own laws and international law. Why should some NGOs be denied registration? And we have seen this. And it's imaginary. Why? As they say. And because we are deflecting in light of the recommendations given in 2021, we are saying this shouldn't happen again. I don't see any reason. These are voluntary associations coming together. They don't provide for that. They want to work for the common good. And then they tender their applications only to spend many years, and some of them rejected. I don't even if they probably RGB follows the process, and I don't know. But I've heard some of them are not even given replies as to why the process is delayed. And the law is very clear. So the law has put maximum and minimum. So He said imaginary. So these are imaginary affairs. In essence, there is nothing that should be preventing the organization to be registered.
That means the organization that have been denied registration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Denied
Maybe we
registration
should
for
start
no
from-
good reason.
We should start from having evidence, how many have been denied, and maybe we discuss. Because
Yeah,
think
that's,
for me,
I agree with
what
you.
is the-
But of course, there is no small, I mean, personally, I've had people who came to me to say they have been denied. It's not a lie. There are some organizations, or even processes taking longer than. Yeah. So I think since we are talking about going forward, those are things we should discuss. I mean, if you don't fill the conditions, RGB should write to us and no, we're not registering you because of this. That's it, because that's what the law provides. There's nothing bad with that. If you don't fill the conditions, you don't fill. I shouldn't register if I'm the one. But if you fill them, but again, we need to go back. We'll talk to RGB. They're a very good partner. They're the custodian. I mean, they're in charge of NGOs. They're very good. I know if you're talking about those organizations, there shouldn't be many. Otherwise, it would be a problem. I don't have numbers myself, as you said. But of course, I know a few that came to us, or and their registrations. There are even some that were asked to deregister. I think there's one I heard about. So, but again, freedom of association, right? Unless they are serious grounds as the law provided for, then they will not be registered. But if they're fulfilling the conditions, that thing that he said that is marginal shouldn't be there. And for Mugisha, I think we're running out of time. I think we need to. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Maybe Jean-Paul would like to talk about that. We are seeing a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of people are misusing these platforms. On one hand, I want to believe that social media has promoted also, is also contributing to opening up on the freedom of expression. People are expressing themselves using social media. But we're also seeing negative effects of, probably, I was hoping that you could give us an answer because you also head RMC, the secretariat, and these issues come to your desk all the time. But we're also concerned as citizens, we are consuming a lot. I mean, we are consuming a lot of negative things that we shouldn't be consuming. I agree with you. Obviously, as civil society, we are working with you to, train journalists. But I guess there's a lot more good things we see, but there are also a lot of things that I think we have to work on together to make these platforms to make good use of these platforms. Definitely, they have contributed a lot to opening up in terms of freedom of expression, because the Twitter, everything, there's no way you can avoid them. So that's a very good positive thing about it. But how about people who are? So I know we keep talking about media. Is it literacy for people to know they should be consuming what is right? And this is something we're working on. But I let Jean-Paul for 1 minute or half a minute.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Mugisha that there are abuses of those rights, especially when it comes to freedom of expression on social media, YouTube, whatever. So what people need to know is that these are rights that are not absolute. They have some limitations. And the role of government or state are to have those limitations in a way that are justifiable, proportional, and necessary, so that there will be no abuse from the side of the government when imposing some restrictions. So regarding how people are using those rights or enjoying those rights, the director is coming to talk about the media literacy. I think that is the most important thing, to educate our people so that they know. Now they're not even consumers now, because everyone with a gadget has the right of, has the ability to publish also, so that everyone knows this can be published, because as a social media user, that when there is rumors, fake news, is any Rwandan watching that from YouTube? Is he able to judge if it is fake, if he can verify it himself? So but these are issues that can be also be dealt with media literacy. Regarding the freedom of association they talk about, most of the recommendations are about maybe amending requirements for registration. Maybe the requirements are very tough. So I've got a chance to be part of the treaty body reporting task force. So when drafting the roadmap, maybe we'll come up with some actions relating to maybe reforming or changing the requirements for registration of non-government organizations. Yeah.
You said something about these rights not being absolute, which is very correct. But the extent to which this knowledge is understood by the public and by the media seems to be not that effective. Could it be possible that either the Ministry of Justice or the Legal Aid Forum could come up with something I would call a protocol, an explanatory note that would help to make this right as a constitutional right understood in details as far as to the limits of its provisions and the limits of its abuse.
That would be one of the approach, and that is very.
And this would be used in our training materials because some of them don't even understand the spirit of this provision. It extends its limits. A person just quote, it's my right to say whatever I want. But to what extent is this? On the basis of decided cases, on the basis of doctrine, on the basis of theory. So we come up with a concrete document or a write-up that journalists can be using, or even the public, to understand that this thing has limits. And when you go beyond these limits, you're overstepping the bounds and you're going to be held accountable, not just having it at face value. How can this work? Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I'm afraid we are running out of time. I think this is an interesting conversation which we can still have in our respective jurisdictions. Why do we strike a balance between someone's right to freedom of expression and others' rights? As you may know, we should always look at the principle of necessity. Does the benefit outweigh the risk or the other way around? And also the principle of legality. If we want to restrict it, we have to make sure that the law, if we want to put in place a law, it has to be very clear. Otherwise, we'll be violating even the freedom of expression. Probably we could still have this kind of discussions. It's also happening across the globe with Twitter, YouTube. Countries are struggling. Even the case of Trump, he has been banned from using Twitter. And people were saying it should have been a decision taken by the courts. So that's an ongoing conversation. And I think we might not pretend we'll exhaust it here, but we.
Yes. I think there is one thing we can do together because we are working together. We have a EU-funded project that is trying to help journalists, but the idea, and actually that's our role now as for SATA, to make sure that journalists understand. We're providing them with the legal aid. How many now do you have? Like about 10. We used to have 10. Yeah. So those you was talking about edited images, and we're also guiding them on how to interpret the law when they want to, use the law in their investigative journalism. But I think we can work on that one, produce guidelines that you have on the ethics. It's really not very expensive. It's something that we can do just to help them to understand those things. So, Jean-Paul.
I wanted to, it's the same question actually, but if I went out, today we're talking about YouTube channels. Also you have Twitter, someone may be having 100,000 followers. If I went out and I said, Jean-Paul, is a thief, and I tweet. Okay, I've expressed myself. Do we have any gap in our current legal framework? Does the law allow me to say anything today? And as lawyers, do you think we should have a specific legislation for that? Because technology continues to advance. I may have my own YouTube, I may be having my Twitter handle. It doesn't matter whether it's YouTube or what, and I feel I can say whatever I want to say. Now, I was asking someone who owns a radio, and apparently with radios and TV, the owner of the radio has an obligation to control the content. They told me there's some minutes that we're supposed to be following. If you remember that case of the other guy who owned the radio where it was closed because of a pastor, I think there was blame that was put on the owner of the radio because you're supposed to be speaking, but there's some level of control. But now with social media, I own my own. It doesn't matter, by the way, some of these YouTube they put out some news or whatever, and you see 50,000, 100,000. So things have changed. There's no you can control. Does our current legal framework have any gaps on this? Or it can be a crime. If you say something that's wrong, or you abuse someone or insult, do we have any provisions in our current legal framework? Or should we start thinking about legislating for this new situation? Thank you.
I think if I may tell something about, like in the US, they have what they call the Communication Decency Act. But I believe if we are to bring up one of the similar sort, it would be an attack that we are limiting press freedoms. This is what I'm talking about, having like guidelines that would now become, since we're in the spirit of self-regulation, whereby a person gets to understand out of spirit what it means to express yourself within the limits of the law and what it means to go beyond, because having it as a statement in the Constitution is one thing. Having it by perception and understanding it's another thing. So that's what I'm trying to emphasize, such that we keep in the limits of making people understand other than going by the law, because Rwanda has taken the trend of self-regulation because we believe that laws may not do much, but self-regulation through conscious and understanding may make an impact.
Thank you, Manuel, and also thank you to the panelists. I think this has been very interesting discussions, and I hope that we'll keep this kind of a conversation. And I can see Leonie. She has an announcement to make.
Thank you to our panelists for an insightful reflection on civil and political rights. Without much delay, we're going to have our third panel, which is the last panel for today. And they're going to be reflecting on the social and economic rights in light of the 2021 UPR recommendations. Maître Christian, the floor is yours.
A very warm welcome to Anthony Businge and Anastas Gakire. We are going to have a discussion on the recommendations focusing on social and economic rights, which enjoyed the support of the government of Rwanda, as the minister put it this way this morning. That's they supported some recommendations, they took notes of some, and others they are still in the pipeline. I'll start with you, Mr. Anthony. You have been working in the field of human rights in Rwanda for many years. Probably you would agree with me that different findings have shown progress in the area of social economic rights, specifically on the rights to health, including sexual and reproductive health, the decline in maternal mortality, infant mortality, a higher number of people having access to medical insurance, and so forth. But we have been receiving recommendations several times during the first, second, and third cycle of the UPR. Recommendations on the right to health, food security. And my usual question is, how come we still receive these kind of recommendations, despite of all efforts we have put in place? Then some would say even the numbers speak for themselves. Did people in Geneva get us wrong? Or you think there's still something missing? What's your take on this?
Thank you very much. For the good question you have raised, it is hard always to speak last, especially when we had the insight from the minister. The flesh was taken, we are just giving out the bones. You mentioned about the recommendations that we usually get from Geneva. As he mentioned, the minister in the morning, I concur with him that we shall continue getting recommendations as long as we are implementing. He mentioned the way the country is changing. Rwanda is not the Rwanda we know in 2004. This is 21. We are about 20 years working, improving on many things. Rwanda in 2004, I believe if we count the hospitals that were existing before, we are very few. And today we are entering, like he mentioned, into regional blocks, international standards, raising international standards, diversity, and definitely as you grow, you need to also put in place many policies, laws, programs, and with that, of course, the recommendation will continue coming in. I would say that we are not failing. I believe Rwanda has improved a lot in regard to health. I think Dr. Aphrodis work with the ministry so much. He knows that there is a lot of improvement. We have registered a lot of many hospitals in the last 5 years. Public health centers. Health posts bring closer the health services to the citizens. You have had recently the law on the mutuelle de santé, the law of subsidy. You have heard about this law in 2019. This is the recent law that came in also to improve the quality of health systems, access to health by the citizens, looking at the complaints that were given in by citizens, especially under the categorization of Budehe. There was a lot of complaints, and this one made it clear that the law should be revised and also bridge the gap that were existing on this scheme. We have had laws, the recent laws also on abortion, which was very, very hectic. I believe organization in the health sector did a lot of advocacy, a lot. And one of the issues that also we should commend is also the Ministry of Health collaborates well with the civil society. I believe the laws that were in place, that are put in place in health sector shows that there is a lot of improvement. When you look at the recommendations in health sector, we got about 8 recommendations, 2 accepted and incorporated in the implementation, 3 are accepted and are in progress, and 3 were noted. We are not rejected. We are noted. It shows that actually Rwanda is improving, especially in this area. You will concur with me that there are still a lot to improve. Though there is a lot of improvement, but we still have some challenges, especially the limited skilled labor force. Doctors are still very few. Nurses are still very few in this country. And we believe that's an area where the government should put a lot of effort. Access to medicine is still a nightmare, especially for those who have insurance of Mutuelle. It is still challenging for them to get medicine from district pharmacies, from public hospitals, and that's also still a challenge. The budget that is given the ministry is still limited. Those are challenges the government is still facing, which might bring also more recommendations after 5 years. So I believe recommendations are still coming in, and the government is also trying to continue improving on the just sector. You mentioned the security on the food security. Yes, food security is really a challenge, especially during this period of COVID. COVID affected the sector of food security very much. Why? Because we had lockdown, we had COVID measures in place, and this limited a lot of production. There was reduced income. There is inflation, and definitely this has brought in issues of food security, and hence bringing in stunting because there is lack of enough food. There is malnutrition, even though the government did a lot to reduce that. But because of the COVID pandemic, I see some issues coming again, which might be also issues the government should look into very urgently.
Thank you, Anthony. Now I'll move to Gakire. We received recommendations on the right to education and access to safe drinking water, despite the fact that sometimes even on TV, we have seen people praising the government for making the reality for them to have access to safe drinking waters. We've seen children going to school. We have also a high enrollment rates. But we still receive these kind of recommendations that we should really put efforts in relation to quality educations and also access to safe drinking water. What's your take on these recommendations in relation to quality education and access to safe drinking water?
Thank you very much. Rwanda Ministry reviews continue to receive recommendation about right to education, especially to right to quality of education. And we are asking me why? Why? I can see this question in terms of institutions. We have the Ministry of Education, which coordinate all activities related to the right to education, but we have other key institutions like WDA. We have the High Council of University, we can have also, we can see at district level where district can do management, daily management of school. But if you are not analyze this right, we are seeing that the mechanism of measuring the achievement of the country, we can see two, quantitatively and qualitatively. Sometimes we refer to the number of indicators like enrollment, like number of schools, number of rooms, but we forget to see, to measure the quality, qualitatively, the right to education. I give an example. If we are seeing what happened at the end of primary school, if you are see the laureate.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to find out with our technicians if everything is okay, so that even people who are following us online, we have not been lost.
That they are following, someone's computer is freezing, but people are still following the discussion.
Okay, thanks a lot for the assurance. Okay, you can proceed.
So let me go through to an example. If we are looking the laureate from our secondary school, so you can see and look what the quality of education they have. If I can see in terms of the language, for example, at the end of secondary school, a laureate can be able to speak in English, to speak in French, or to speak in Kinyarwanda. Sometimes I meet some people say, if you are asking to produce a document like this, or to make a speech, and they ask me what I'm going to use as language. I'm going to use Ifra-Kinyangle, meaning that.
What is that?
Ifra-Kinyangle, meaning that he is going to mix Kinyarwanda, French, and English. You are seeing that we have problem of language at the beginning of our education. We have also, among the reason of the low quality of education, we have a high teacher and student relation. If you are looking in the citizen report card of 2020, we are on 62%. 62%. It is enough. We are improving. But if you evaluate, yes, as if you see what can be done to achieve at 100% the quality of education, 62% is enough. I am agree with the minister. We cannot achieve this right at 100%. But seeing what we have now, we have some indicators that shows we are improving, but on the other side, we have many problems like the socioeconomic condition of teachers. See what happened. Looking at that problem, you can start at the nursery, looking what kind of teachers we have, pre-nursery, looking what kind of teachers we have, and go up. There is a problem. There is also the problem of dropout. the rate is increasing every year. We have in our research mentioned the hidden school fees in form of teachers' facilities. We have the problem of child defilement at school and teenage pregnancies. We have drug abuse in our adolescents, which can have a negative impact of the right to education. We have also mentioned the problem of poor coordination at all programs and the follow-up of all policies put in place. So you are asking me what civil society organization should do in the implementation of the recommendation given. So I can say that the key role of the civil society organization is clear. So we should continue to determine the level of implementation of the accepted recommendation by doing research and reporting periodically. We can also create space to show the implementing institution what remain to be done in order to speed up the implementation efforts. Also, I think civil society organization should, why not, participate in the training or awareness of teachers in terms of language, in terms of the key role of the parent in the education of children, or in terms of the increasing budget to support right to education. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Gakire. And for the sake of time, please bear with me. I will just take one question. I wish we could take more questions, but for the sake of time, please bear with me. We'll just take one question if you have any, and we'll still keep our conversations. Yes, Leonie?
We have a question from a participant online, John Rusimbi. He's asking, why are parents increasingly trusting private schools over government schools? What should be done to improve the quality of government schools?
Thank you very much, Leonie. Gakire, what's your take on that question?
Yeah, thank you. As I see, my opinion on that question is that the government has put in place the policy which is open for investors. I cannot see if it is negative to see more private sectors, private sectors put a lot of money in education. So if the country, the enjoyment of the right to education is not, is also liable by the situation, the economic situation of the country. Sometimes some factors like poverty can intervene. If I'm not aware if in Rwanda we have a lot of private school than official school, but what I am seeing is that whatever in the private school, in the official school, the quality of education is low. So I'm asking myself what can be done to improve the quality of education. But it is not bad to have this in balance of in kind of numbers.
Thank you very much, Gakire. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this session. It has been my pleasure to moderate these two sessions. And I will ask you to give a round of applause to our panelists. And I shall hand over to Leonie to take us through to the next phase of this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear panelists, for your wonderful reflection on social and economic rights. And thank you very much, Maître Christian, for your wonderful moderation. As we come closer to the end of our workshop, I am pleased to welcome the Executive Director of Never Again Rwanda to briefly deliver closing remarks.
Rwanda Civil Society Platform Chairperson. So that is Ndakosoi. That's quick.
Oya ntugire ikibazo nawe uri bugufunge. Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying it. I think people would be wondering why Never Again is providing closing remarks. Yeah, one, allow me to thank the Legal Aid Forum, of course, the Executive Director, Kananga Andrews, for this great work. I know it's not easy to bring 31 civil society organizations together, but I would like to thank the efforts and the resources in order to facilitate this coalition. The good thing with the coalition is that when you're one, you make noise, but when you're many, you make a point. So, and when it comes to human rights issues, we always need to have one voice so that we can be able to address issues that are affecting our society. Yeah, of course, the objective of this meeting or workshop was to reflect on the recommendations and to jointly draw ideas on best ways and strategies to monitor the implementation and the recommendations. We've had the opportunity to reflect on the civil, political, women and child and social and economic rights. And all the panelists have done an amazing job. But since morning, one thing that we've seen, and also the questions that some participants shared, there's need for awareness. There's need to disseminate the recommendations so that we get each and everybody involved. So that goes back to the civil society, because awareness and dissemination, this is our day-to-day work. So we need to involve citizens so that they can also be able to hold different government institutions on how far they've gone in implementing the recommendations. The civil society has proven to be vital for the success of the UPR. But based on the discussions with the minister today, so civil society, we need to pull up our socks. We need to have facts, and we shouldn't fear anything as long as you have the facts. To monitor the implementation of UPR recommendations effectively and jointly, the following will be needed: clear communication and alignment, driving accountability, be action-oriented, and we need to track the progress. Although many civil society are working on different issues, but we've seen that we are competing for the same beneficiary. So the citizen, all of us, even the government, is also competing for the citizen. Civil society is also competing for the citizen. So basically we are partners in development. With the human rights respected, we can be assured of a country that enjoys lasting peace, free from GBV, inequalities, and a country whose citizens fully participate in the decision-making process. So civil society members present here, the ball is in our hands. Allow me to thank the development partners who have been with us since morning, and also those who have also been online since morning. That shows that human rights is on the heart of each and everybody. So thanks a lot, and I wish you the best.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the closing remarks and sharing points on the way forward. Your Excellencies, distinguished participants present here in the room, and the ones following us virtually, a heartfelt thank you for your incredible participation today. It has been a truly, truly engaging workshop. We have now come to the end of this workshop, and for those following us virtually, feel free to leave the platform and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you very much for engaging with us. For those of us here physically, kindly pass by our registration desk. It's right outside to pick your lunch vouchers. The restaurant is on your right, immediately outside the hall. Thank you very much once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.